Lunch, everybody. Nice leisurely lunch break. We are back on our agenda. And next up, we will have municipality and special district audit processes. Petrie, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Got a fact sheet here prepared similar to the one that we considered before lunch on legislative subpoenas. So really just looking at what some of our surrounding states do in terms of compliance, audit compliance, expectations of different types of communities in terms of population or revenue and expenditures. I'll touch on this memo briefly, and then following that presentation, you'll have an opportunity to visit with the folks from the Department of Audit as well as the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. Before I get started, again, credit to Libby Miles, who did the heavy lift on this research, and so very much appreciated for her work. The question we asked was, what are the financial reporting requirements for local governments in Wyoming and surrounding states, and what resources are available to help local governments maintain compliance? This question in its earliest form really focused more on special districts than it did on municipalities, but what we found in our research was there are some similarities between the two. And so we broadened the question to some degree and include those aspects of the research to include both special districts and municipalities. Of the states that we surveyed, including the state of Wyoming, all of them allow for less stringent financial reporting requirements for local governments that have populations under a certain number of inhabitants. Total revenues or expenditures under a certain amount, or both. In Wyoming, public officers are required to attend training courses conducted by the Department of Audit. And in addition, the Wyoming Association of Municipalities, or WAM, offers financial resources, including a new municipal finance program for municipal public officers. You'll see some additional information on what I just mentioned on both page 4 and 5 of this fact sheet. Looking at just Wyoming, for municipalities, Wyoming Uniform Municipal Procedures Act applies to all incorporated first-class cities, towns having more than 4,000 inhabitants, all towns operating under a city manager form of government, counties, school districts, and community colleges. All of these are required to obtain a financial audit conducted by an independent auditor each fiscal year and then report to the Department of Audit. Specific to special districts and small towns, special districts and incorporated towns with a population of less than 4,000 inhabitants are subject to specific risk assessments as outlined by the Department of Audit administrative rules. For incorporated towns with a population of less than 4,000 inhabitants, there are two levels of risk assessment, level A and level B. There is a brief description of those two levels of risk assessment in the memorandum, but I think it's probably easier just to look at the table that we have on page 3 of the memo. Gives you just at a glance what those two levels are, what those basically what the thresholds are for those two levels of risk assessment, and then the required financial reporting. So level A, we're looking at towns with less than 4,000 inhabitants that have annual revenue or expenditures of $100,000 or more. Total, there are 74 of those. And you can see in the column required financial reporting, the requirements of them are proof of cash provided by an independent third party, self-audit procedure performed by an independent third party, self-assessment of internal control procedures, and then bank reconciliation performed by an independent third party. For level B, again, towns with less than 4,000 inhabitants, but also have annual revenue or expenditures less than $100,000. Their requirements are less, quite frankly, proof of cash provided by an independent third party. By our count, there were only 2 of those in the state. For special districts, there are 5 levels of risk assessment, again, still in Wyoming, that inform reporting responsibilities determined by the greater of total annual revenues or expenditures. All districts, regardless of risk assessment level, are required to report findings and submit an annual report summary to the Department of Audit. If you jump to page 4, again, we can see a table for Wyoming special districts laid out in the same format. You've got the 5 levels there in the far left-hand column. The threshold that determines what type of financial reporting is required of them. And then in the far right-hand column, the number of entities that we counted that fall into those various categories. But again, you can see that as the annual revenue or expenditures decreases from level A through level E, that the financial reporting requirements are less stringent. I'm not going to touch much on the training conducted by the Department of Audit. I'm sure that that's probably part of their presentation, as well as what the Wyoming Association of Municipalities provides. They will probably touch on that during their portion of the presentation. So with that, I'll pause there for a moment if there are any questions on Wyoming. Otherwise, I can go into some quick comments on each of the individual states surrounding Wyoming.
All right. Any questions from the committee on Wyoming? Representative?
Thank
I
you.
see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the memo. I'm wondering how often the risk assessment levels have been adjusted. So the last time was in January of 2023. Is that something that's reviewed on a regular basis? Is there a policy for adjustment for inflations to that threshold? Thank you.
Mr. Petrie?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood, I would have to defer to my friends at the Department of Audit to answer that question. I'll ask them to cover that during their portion of the presentation if that's acceptable.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, let's look at some surrounding states. Let's start with Colorado. Their statute requires all local governments to file an annual audit with the state auditor's office. However, local governments with revenues or expenditures less than $1 million may annually file for an exemption of the required audit. They can do this using either a short form application or a long form application. Regardless of which one is used, both forms require information on cash, capital assets, and long-term debt. Idaho, again, with the state of Idaho, we have a table that I think covers the state of Idaho quite nicely. That's at the top of page 6 of the memo. Again, it classifies the type of reporting that's required based upon annual expenditures. So anything over $300,000 requires a full and complete audit by an independent auditor each year. $200,000 to $300,000 may apply to complete an audit on a biennial basis rather than annually. And then less than $200,000, there are no minimum audit requirements. Again, this is the state of Idaho. Looking at Kansas, Kansas statute dictates that the governing body of any local government must use accounting and fiscal procedures to prepare financial statements and reports to be annually audited by the Department of Administration. Gross receipts greater than $500,000 require examination by a certified public accountant at least once a year. More than $275,000 but less than $500,000 have to have their accounts examined by a CPA using 17 tests determined by the Department of Administration Office of Accounts and Reports Director at least once a year. Municipalities meeting these criteria are subject to enhanced examination procedures at least once every 3 years. So again, as the dollar levels drop, the compliance procedures become a little less rigid. But in the case of these group of entities that fall in kind of this middle dollar range, they're subject to something a little more extensive every third year. Kansas was good to us in that they provided some very detailed information. You'll actually find that in Appendix A to this memo. They gave us a couple of pages worth of exactly how they handle this and what they provide to their local governments. The statute, again, in Kansas, the statute is silent on auditing requirements for municipalities with less than $275,000 in total gross receipts. Montana statute dictates that the governing body of all government entities must ensure that a financial report is made every year. Rules set forth governmental accounting and financial reporting standards, including a small government financial reporting framework that applies to local government entities which have a population of less than 10,000 people. Montana, like Kansas, provided us with some more specific information than you have in our summary. A couple pages worth, again, of administrative rules for accounting and financial reporting standards. That is Appendix B. South Dakota, financial and compliance audits for each municipality within the state at least every 2 years are required. However, municipalities with less than $600,000 in annual revenue must submit an annual report in lieu of an audit. And Utah. Utah rules create thresholds to differentiate reporting requirements based upon total annual revenues or expenditures. Again, similar to some of the other states we looked at. If you turn to page 8 of your research memo, we have a table for the state of Utah. Again, annual revenue or expenditures over $1 million, a financial audit reporting package. Annual revenue or expenditures from $350,000 to $999,999. Large financial survey and agreed upon procedures report. And then for those with annual revenue or expenditures of less than $350,000, the entity's financial statements and a self-evaluation form. So I think in summary, probably the best way to look at this is that every one of the states that we looked at has slightly different requirements, although they're relatively similar, but they all stratify what is required in terms of reporting and compliance based upon lower population levels or lower levels of annual revenue or expenditures, or some combination of the three. So virtually every state recognizes that with smaller entities per se, that the reporting requirements are not as stringent. With that, I will stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Questions, Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for presenting this to us. My question is about failures of these audits. Did we come across any information from these states on what they do if they have failed audits that are in consecutive years?
Mr. Petrie?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, we did not look at that, though we could if you would like us to.
Any other questions? No. I had one. Is there I know they go by GAO standards, but is there a requirement specific to CPAs for government audits specifically? Is there a special license needed for that or education in that area needed for audit by a CPA?
Mr. Chairman, again, I don't know the answer to that question, but I would defer to the Department of Audit.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we'll have the Wyoming Department of Audit up for non-compliance questions. Please introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Justin Chavis, Director of the Department of Audit. I have with me Rich Cummings. He's our Public Funds Administrator. Our Public Funds Division is the division within the Department of Audit that is responsible for the audit of government entities. Between what Mr. Petrie presented and what we have here gives a pretty good kind of overview of the requirements and the processes. So I'm interested in what questions you all have. I can kind of run through and verbalize the overview if you would like, or I can answer questions. I can answer the two questions that we've had so far. So as far as adjusting risk assessment levels that Representative Sherwood asked about, because most of that is set in statute, we don't then adjust ours. So statute sets that 25,000 and below, statute sets that 25,000 to 100,000, and statute sets that million or over. So that's all set by statute. So that leaves the 100 to a million. And if those other ones are staying static within statute, we've left the other levels static so that there's kind of that proportion there. So those have not been adjusted anytime recently. That would require a change in statute. As far as the additional certification for CPAs auditing government entities, there is no requirement. They're required to adhere to Yellow Book standards, so generally accepted government audit standards. They have to adhere to those in performance of the audit. Now, there is an option through the AICPA to be part of the Government Audit Quality Center. That does impose additional requirements on those firms that choose to be members of that quality center. And so if they choose to, then they have additional requirements. If they're not part of the Government Audit Quality Center, then they don't have those additional requirements. But they all are required to perform the audit in accordance with Yellow Book.
Great. Questions? So I just had one. So no matter what the size of the entity, the same standards apply, just using Yellow Book and GAL.
Mr. Chairman, so the audit process, the audit itself has to be done in accordance with Yellow Book. What changes based depending on the size of the entity, and not really the size of the entity, but what statute says, is municipalities are subject to financial statements under GAAP. If you're not subject to the Municipal Fiscal Procedures Act, then you can have cash-based financial statements. But the procedures for the audit all have to comply with GAAP, or not GAAP, but Yellow Book.
Yes, Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the LSO, we have a handout that says we have 696 special districts. Would you say that that's a pretty good accounting for how many we have in the state?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, plus or minus, it varies from year to year. Some of them end up being dissolved, other new ones come online, but that's a pretty good, usually sits somewhere 650 to 700.
Oh, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when I'm looking at the 2025 consensus compliance report that we have, there's a total number of reporting entities here at the bottom. Can you walk me through how many of them are consistently non-compliant?
Director Travis.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean. So I think one of our other tables, so we've got 78% of the non-compliant entities are kind of repeat. I can provide you the one, I think we've provided before, a list of the entities that have been repeatedly non-compliant multiple years. We can update, I think we provided that for 22, 23, 24, maybe in one of last year's meetings, but we could do an updated one and get that to you.
Thank you.
Other questions? So walk me through, if you had received audits that were, had material issues in them, either consistently or grossly non-compliant with statute, describe to me the process that you go through then in dealing with that. Does that get forwarded to the AG's office? Does it get forwarded to elsewhere? And what is the process for follow-up with that?
Mr. Chairman, so if it's an audit that we've done, so we do an audit, if we come back and do another audit, or we have actual follow-up engagements where the sole purpose of that is to determine whether or not they've fixed anything. So we'll look at, did they fix it? A lot of times they haven't. So historically, what we've done there is brought that to Management Audit Committee. And then the Management Audit Committee has contacted those entities, asked them to come testify. That process is what kind of led to the statutory change where funds get withheld if you're not compliant, and the statutory change to requiring the public officer training. So if it's audits that we've done, then we generally bring those issues to Management Audit Committee. There's really not any other, I'll say, avenue in statute that gives us any enforcement authority. We're largely a reporting entity. So for stuff that we've done, that's kind of the process. For your municipalities, typically we're just making sure those audits are done. It should be the governing body that is making sure that those corrections happen. And so we make sure they get done and kind of when we think it's necessary, kind of have a conversation of what's driving the issue. In general, probably post-COVID, most of what's driving the issue is a lack of accounting knowledge. Kind of not only in Wyoming, but nationwide, you're seeing a reduction in particularly people that have a solid knowledge of GAAP. And so that's generating a lot of the issues that we're seeing is entities may have someone that was really knowledgeable, longtime employee, they leave. The entity struggles to find someone with that equivalent knowledge. And then particularly when you're talking GAAP, that can kind of get off the rails in a hurry. So.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Next up.
We're gonna bring it for certain stuff.
Oh, if there's specific questions, why don't you guys go ahead and stay? I think there'll be questions that only you can answer.
Sure.
Yep. You can come up, wham, and should be okay. You're not going to all speak at once, are you? All right.
Are we still with Department of Audit?
Yeah, we're still with Department of Audit. Any questions that relate to that or any accountability questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
I think what they provided on maybe the last page, I guess it wasn't. Page 4, Department of Audit. Can you briefly tell me what that is? I guess it says table below provides the number of entities who were non-compliant in multiple years, entity and classification type. It says total number of reporting entities and then has these different months. Can you explain that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson. So the September 30, November 30, December 30, those are all statutory markers for when things happen. And so the numbers that are here are for the entity classification. That's how many of that type of entity was repeat non-compliant at that date. So if you look at September 30 with 43 counties, that's the number of times that there's been repeat non-compliance. Not necessarily the number of entities, but the number of times there's been. So if you take all the entities, the number of times there's been repeat non-compliance.
Mr. Chairman,
Follow up?
so that could be, that 43 could be, one county had 3 of them. Is that
Mr.
correct?
Chairman, Senator Larson, yes.
I want to get more specific on the library board that I had asked you about.
Mhm.
And where would that fall into? Would that be county's responsibility to try to tell them to do their job? And then they would report to the county? And I guess I have a question. Did that happen with that specific library board in a certain county?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson. So in general, yes, the libraries are a component unit essentially of the county. And so the county would have purview over making sure they're, although the board does have it, or the libraries do typically have their own board, but ultimately they're a subset of the county. In this case, the library board was not reporting to us and should have been. And so there's been some back and forth. I'd probably have to check in with the specific auditor that is handling that if you wanted some more detailed information.
Mr. Chairman, follow
Yes,
up.
follow up.
So on that particular library, they are supposed to report to you, but also the county, and the county should push them to get it done? Is that what I'm hearing?
Travis.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, yes. So for our purposes, if, for example, a library board is not reporting to us and should be, we also say the county is not compliant because the county, they are part of the county. So that the county should be directing the library board to report to us.
Mr. Chairman,
Follow
follow
up,
up?
yes.
That's all right.
Yeah, you can continue.
So what is the procedure? You really don't have any teeth to force this to happen, is kind of what I'm hearing.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, correct. As an, at least for the stuff that relates to public funds, statute doesn't provide any enforcement authority. So statute will provide, I'll say, penalties in some instances where, like if they're not compliant, then they have their sales, use, and lodging tax withheld until they are compliant. Outside of that, we have no authority to make them do anything. We can tell them, hey, you're supposed to. Statute says you're supposed to. Ultimately, if they choose to ignore us, there's not a whole lot that statute provides for. We could maybe refer it to the AG's office. To my knowledge, there's not a lot of instances where anything's gone beyond that.
Follow up.
Mr. Chairman, at some point in this meeting, I may want to ask this entity to come and testify. So
That
later
particular library.
yeah, later on, we may discuss that. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Any entity that anybody wants to bring up that is non-compliant, I think we can address that in this meeting and request for them to come forward and ask. Senator McEwen?
Mr. Chairman, at what point do you want that?
We can do it during this questioning with the audit because they'll have knowledge of that entity more than likely. So that's one that you want to put on.
I do.
notice?
Yes. Can I
Okay.
do that now, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like the Bighorn County Library Board to come and report. And I think I should probably ask the county commissioner, someone from there also.
Okay, so we'll note that and we'll just kind of have an ongoing list here of any specifics that people want to have come forward. Staff, did you have a comment?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know Representative Williams does have her hand up.
Okay. Representative Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, I'm taking a look at your document on the website that's titled Non-Compliant Government Entities as of December 30th, 2025. And the website tells me that we can look at status changes of these entities that are non-compliant. But I have no way of accessing whether or not they are in compliance now or not. In other words, these hyperlinks don't work. So as the committee considers, who to bring forward in front of us for non-compliance, I think it's important to have an updated document for the committee.
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Williams, we can get you a current document of who's non-compliant. So we provide that on a regular basis to the Department of Revenue because they're required to withhold funds. So we can just provide the document that's provided to them.
Any follow-up? All right, Senator McEwen.
Just curious, when the Department of Revenue withholds sales and use tax funds, is there a fine or a fee or a penalty attached to it, or do they get them all back as soon as they're in compliance?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown. So the way statute is written is once they come into compliance, they get all of that.
That's nice.
So that's,
Late on my sales or use tax, it's 10% and 1.5% interest.
yeah. Statute only provides for it to be withheld until they're in compliance, and then they get everything that's been withheld to that point.
Wonder how I can run a government grocery store.
Yes, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, that brings up another question. So the Department of Revenue is withholding some sales tax. Is that what I'm hearing? And specifically, would it be on Bighorn County?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, if we have Bighorn County reported as non-compliant, then yes, sales, use, and lodging tax is withheld until they are compliant.
Director, what do you usually see when that happens? If their sales tax is being withheld, what time frame typically does a county or an entity get back into compliance after something like that happens?
Mr. Chairman, so I don't know that I have a good, like a solid time frame that I could give you, other than our experience says when funds are withheld, that tends to spur the entities to come into compliance when they're not. But as far as how long that takes, I don't know that I could give you a solid figure there.
So as a director, do you need any other tools legislatively that would help you to get organizations back into compliance, or just overall, what do you see as something that could help this process and help those that have a material weakness?
Mr. Chairman, I think there's probably a few things that could be considered. As I mentioned before, I think one of the driving issues is just a lack of people with adequate accounting knowledge. WHAM with what they'll talk about, some of the strategies they're doing, I would expect would help kind of address some of those issues, being a resource of people that do have solid accounting knowledge for those entities that have trouble finding it themselves. I think that's an option. What you're seeing kind of on a national level out of some states is a movement to get rid of the requirement for GAAP-based financials. Because if you look at a lot of the audit findings out of, say, municipalities, it has to do with GAAP and their accounting staff not knowing GAAP. And so if you went to, say, cash-based financials, that probably takes care of a lot of those issues. Now, I would say I'm not necessarily advocating for that. There's pros and cons to each approach, but that is a strategy that some states are taking, is to say, let's allow cash-based financial statements. I think those are probably two big ones. I think there's probably others that their non-compliance doesn't fall into that, and they're just slow to make corrections, or because there is no consequence, essentially, that they just continue to do what they've been doing. Statutory changes that would address that. The question was posed earlier about what do other states do if there's repeated non-compliance. There's quite a bit of variability there, but some states take a similar approach as with our census compliance, and it's, we're withholding money from you until you fix this. Now, will that fix if they can't find appropriate accounting people? Probably not. But that's something that other states do. I don't know if codifying the requirement. So like state of Montana, their statute actually charges the governing body with saying, hey, you have to fix these. That doesn't really exist in Wyoming statute. Few options there.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, when you withhold sales, use, and lodging tax, do you withhold all of it or a portion of it?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, all of it, I believe, is withheld.
So how do these entities function if they go 2 months? They have payroll, don't they?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, I would say probably with other sources of revenue as well as maybe reserves. My guess is that probably varies across entities. But my thought would be other revenue sources or reserves.
Well, I can't believe I'm going to ask this.
Follow up.
So withholding the sales, use, and lodging tax, albeit uncomfortable, does it really hurt them?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, I think it probably depends on the entity. I think some of them, your larger entities, it's probably not, they could probably withstand that for a little while. Smaller entities, maybe not. But when you're talking sales, use, and lodging tax, there's also a lot of entities that's not a lot of money. Some of the entities, towns, for example, where that's being withheld, it's a few $100. I think it depends on entity as to how much impact that has.
So it's not a very big stick then?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, I think for some entities, no.
Thank you.
Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I'm looking at this document on page 3, there's also a table. Is that the same statutory non-compliance with the same dates of September 30, November 30, and December 31?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean. Yeah, so this is similar information as in relation to the statutory dates, just broken out more by classification. And so like the special districts, statute only provides, the 25 and below, 25 to 1, a million and above. So we just broke it out more to say, for more granular dollar amounts, but it's similar information just presented with some different criteria.
Follow-up.
Yes, follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On these two tables, I do recognize that September 30th has a much larger percentage of people that are non-compliant. Have you found any indication as to why they're missing that deadline?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, I think again that varies by entity. Some of your smaller entities, they have the people submitting these are volunteers or part-time. I think that one's probably something we can pin down. Others, not sure as to why they're missing the deadline. I think if you look though, as time goes by, and you start to subject yourself to having funds withheld, that we get more and more people reporting.
Thank you.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to go back to one of your comments on maybe a fix. So you mentioned gap reporting, and can you say what that is? I guess I don't know the acronym.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson. Do you have another question?
And
Yep.
then you mentioned that maybe going to cash basis. Currently, they can't use that. Is that correct? And would you recommend a dollar amount of revenue that would be the separation?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson. So GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles. And so generally when you're talking GAAP, that means that you are reporting your financials on a full accrual basis, which means you're reporting essentially what you're entitled to and not necessarily money that's come in and gone out. Municipalities have to present their financial statements on a GAAP basis. If you're not subject to the Municipal Fiscal Procedures Act, you can do a cash basis. Whether or not I would recommend it or a dollar amount, I think that's probably something you all would have to determine. Like I say, there's pros and cons to each. Cash basis is definitely simpler and probably easier to audit and easier to report. And so it probably would alleviate a lot of findings that you have from GAAP-based financials. I would say, in my opinion, cash base is easier to manipulate though. So if I wanted to show in this fiscal year fewer revenues, it's easier to manipulate that on a cash basis, because cash basis is literally when did I physically receive that money, whereas a GAAP basis would be when am I entitled to that money. So they both have pros and cons. I think that would be a policy decision that the legislature would have to determine.
Yes, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. So it seems to me that a lot of these reports are happening every year. And so I guess my question is, and you're talking about, hey, we're losing some expertise. Is there training? Is there consistency in reporting? Where's the breakdown here? This is the part that is interesting to me, in that I would think these are the same reports every year at some level. And so, okay, a new person comes in, they should be walking into, this is just me thinking out loud, they should be walking into a template. And to some degree, I would think across Wyoming, you walk into the same template, for the town across the state. Otherwise, two things fall apart in my mind. Why don't we have clear templates of how to report? And why don't we have some oversimplified training to make sure that is consistent? I'd love to hear your conversation on that. That would be helpful.
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Locke. So as far as the reports that get reported to us, the census reports, those are all consistent. Those are largely on a cash basis. And so those are probably I don't know if I want to say less prone to error, don't have the same issues as, say, something that is subject to GAAP. GAAP isn't really about a template because it's going to be based off of specific circumstances. And so I don't think a template solves that issue. In terms of training, again, GAAP is, you can attempt to provide training. GAAP is pretty complex. I'll give you just to give you an idea. So the CPA exam, one of the exams that you have to take to get your CPA covers GAAP. That exam has one of, if not the lowest pass rate of any professional exam. And so it's just complex. And so you can attempt to provide training. How effective that will be just for somebody that doesn't have an accounting degree or the training for that is a tougher issue. Cash-based stuff, I think, would partially address that, because then it's literally money coming in and money going out rather than having to know the ins and outs of GAAP.
Follow up. Could you address, in my area, at least up in Campbell County, it seems there are fewer and fewer CPAs willing to do government audits. Basically because they say the time it takes, the expertise that it takes, and you're not getting any additional revenue than if you were handling a regular customer. Can you speak to that, that kind of phenomenon that's going on throughout Wyoming? I know there are fewer and fewer accountants that will handle audits for government entities. Can you comment?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. And again, it's not just a Wyoming problem. It's a nationwide problem. It's actually the AICPA, so the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, in a joint project with the National State Auditors Association, looked at this issue because it's an issue nationwide of. So like in Wyoming, you definitely have Wyoming-based firms that are kind of pulling back from that space. I think part of that's probably, so I'll back up a little bit. So in most accounting programs, there's not a lot of time spent on government audit or government accounting. And so that has to be trained. Like, you don't just come out of school knowing that. And so as you see people who do know that leave, there's not necessarily that mechanism for replacing that knowledge or that training. But with that joint project, you hit on a couple of things. One, because government generally operates on a competitive bid basis, there's not as much revenue in government audit as they could do in the private sector. That's actually the white paper that was produced. That's one of the conclusions is because it's just not profitable. And so I think you see, at least anecdotally in Wyoming, as firms have people who are knowledgeable in government audit and accounting writs higher, they're pulling back from that space. But I think you hit on a couple of things. There's just not a lot of backfill for that knowledge, and it's not as profitable as other business segments within a CPA firm.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. We will talk to now Wham, if you want to introduce the people you have with you. And
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. Ashley Harpstreet with Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and we appreciate the opportunity to discuss this really important topic today. As you know, WHAM exists to help our member communities govern well, providing that education, training, and best practices local leaders need to deliver those services that their residents depend on every day. Transparency is of the utmost importance to our communities and to WHAM, and that starts with the sound financial management. In response to a clear need within our membership, WAM has stood up a Wyoming Municipal Finance Program to address a gap we keep seeing across Wyoming cities and towns. Many of our smallest communities simply don't have the staff capacity or specialized accounting expertise to keep pace with the day-to-day service delivery, alongside increasingly complex financial reporting requirements from evolving Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or the acronyms GASB, standards, to shifting federal and state requirements. Couple that with high turnover and a national CPA shortage, there's a desperate need for technical assistance to stay in compliance. So Director Chavez just stole my thunder. We agree with everything he just said. I'm proud to say our program is led by Shari Laura, who's spent 19 years as the city treasurer for the city of Lander and holds a master's in accounting, a CPA, along with an ACPFA, ACPFIM credential. She'll have to spell that out. Through the program, our member municipalities can access professional support for everything from their monthly and annual accounting to payroll, accounts payable and receivable, grant writing, and preparation of the state required F66 annual financial report. The goal is very simple: give towns access to the financial expertise they need without requiring them to build it in-house, where the cost and the talent often aren't there to begin with. Since launching, we've already heard directly from member communities about the difference this has made. The town of Hudson credited the program with helping them build a clear financial structure and budget a little bit more effectively. The town of Opal, which joined this spring, has spoken to the peace of mind that comes from knowing their finances are being handled by a qualified, responsive a group of qualified, responsive professionals. However, among even our communities, we are not yet able to success. We continue to hear some troubling issues. Today, I'm joined with Darla Hawkins, treasurer of the First Class City of Sheridan, Kelly Millar, clerk treasurer of Upton, who's with a town, and who together with Shari can speak specifically to persistent problems with the F66 process. On the issues of non-compliance response rates, I gently push back on the assumption that entities simply wait until the last minute to complete the census report. In our experience, the delay is often about accuracy, not procrastination. Many small towns are struggling to find the expertise they need to hire a CPA, which is exactly the gap our municipal finance program is working to fill. Larger cities, meanwhile, often have component units that must be reconciled and are waiting on data before they can complete the report in full. On top of that, our communities operate on a mix of cash and accrual accounting systems, which you guys were just speaking about, and many are stretched thin on staffing to begin with, facing not just the F66, but 3 additional census reports as well. I'm sharing this with you today because I think it illustrates both the scale of the problem and the kind of solution that is possible. I'd also like to plant a seed for the committee's consideration. There may be a software and technology solution that could simplify and modernize this process so that every municipality is working from the same system, same accounting principle, rather than a patchwork of platforms and accounting methods, and as Representative Locke said, maybe a template. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Charlie along with Darla and Kelly to speak directly what they're seeing on the ground in Wyoming's towns and cities and where they believe there's room for the committee to help.
Why don't we let these two speak?
Okay, we're gonna let these two go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Kelly Millar, and I serve as the clerk treasurer. I also serve on our as vice president and education chair of the Wyoming Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers. We call it WAMCAT so that we can say it out loud, and that helps us. That's what the entity that trains clerks and treasurers for the state. I've been in my position for 11 years, and I am going back to the University of Wyoming to finish my accounting degree so that I can understand just how to get through some of our reporting and be accurate and transparent within my municipality. Some of the things that we run into is the F66 report it's a form and it looks the same and it's changed a little bit. It's confusing too. If you don't know what you're looking at and you don't know your data intimately, sometimes it's hard to get it and get everything that you need in the right place. And when you come to the end, you don't reconcile. It's hard to go back and figure out where you're at. We've done some trainings through WAMCAT, through some previous employees of Department of Audit who have been incredibly helpful, through current employees of Department of Audit who have been incredibly helpful to get us to close those gaps, but they still exist there. So we're working on it. The municipal finance team at WAM is going to be an incredible resource. There's better communication now. We have not dedicated personally, but dedicated regional auditors from the Department of Audit, so we can ask those questions and get some best practices there. But it is something that we see the gaps, and we'd like to be able to help be part of the solution to fill those. And I would stand for any questions.
Okay, questions? All right, thank you. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and I'm Darla Hawkins with the City of Sheridan. I've been with the city for 4 years, and the report was very difficult to learn, and we're still trying to tweak out all the little issues to get that submitted correctly. The biggest thing that we see is just having the amount of time to get the quality where it needs to be able to submit the information. With the year closing in June, we're still getting those accruals in, we're still getting expenses in. So trying to close out the year while we're trying to report back on what we have is extremely difficult, along with all the other changes that we need to add into our everyday process. We're also struggling with just keeping a full staff with the knowledge base.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you're doing the F66 and this accounting, are you actually dealing with depreciation, obsolescence, and stuff of that nature?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, sorry. Yes, the city of Sheridan, we do the depreciation.
Follow up.
Pretty tall task.
Yeah. All right, any other questions? Okay, did you have other comments? Okay, next. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for coming back to me. And thank you, ladies, for coming today. I appreciate it. My question is about, you talk about the struggle of filling out the form. So are there lines on the form that have multiple names of different accounts? Is it just not knowing your data intimately, like you spoke about? What are the challenges? Could you identify some of those so that we can make the form more user-friendly?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, speaking personally, because I'm only 4 years with the city, with not much government background at all. It would be part of just knowing your accounts intimately. And at the time, we were also going through a conversion with our software program as well. So just knowing and learning all the accounts and where it fits into those, all the different settings. I know I reached out to the the Department of Audit quite a bit for help. I understand that there was some training in the past through the Casper College on filling out the F66. But when I started, they discontinued it because there wasn't very many attendees. So I was sad to hear that. I think that would be something important for future people to be able to access.
Thank you.
Follow up. Okay. All right. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm going to ask the Department of Audit. You do not do training for the F66, I guess is what I'm hearing. And had you in the previously past years?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, so we have had specific training for that in the past years. In recent years, not so much, but are always willing if anybody has questions or issues filling out the form, they can reach out and get some assistance.
Follow up.
Mr. Chairman, so I think I heard that you would do training, or you're asking them to request personal questions, I guess, on their own city or whatever.
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, can we use the microphone?
There we go. If there was demand for us to put on a training, we could certainly put on a training. as she pointed out, it's kind of cyclical. So you get to a point where there's not much demand for training. And so that's not something we regularly offer. But if there is now significant demand for it, then we can provide training. Similar to the public officer training, kind of went through cycle of not a lot of interest, but now actually we're doing a public officer training here in Casper next week. So something that if there's demand for it, we can do.
All right. Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that note, where you said you're doing training next week, is that a duplicative effort from what they're doing at WHAM?
Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean. So we've been asked specifically to put on in-person training. So I'm not sure what WHAM's got going on, but this was in response to specific requests of us to put on in-person training.
Thank you.
Would you like to answer that too?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, what we do at WHAM is we provide at every conference in the winter and summer. And so we did not do one at our recent summer conference because we're revamping the program. It has been approved by the Department of Audit through the Director's Office, but it's more tailored to municipal practices. And then we put financial just training in general in it as well. But we're going to start rolling that out with LCCC, that Laramie County Community College, that also has a certified public manager programming. And then the hopes of it compartmentalizing and going out through all the community colleges, along with the Department of Audit's offerings. I think it's important that it's offered a lot of different ways, a lot of different mediums, and to meet the different elected officials where they are. Thank you.
Representative Rodriguez Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just follow up from Representative Lean's question for the director regarding the handout that we got. It says the Department of Audit is required to provide or maintain a list of courses approved for public officer training. Where can one find this list of courses that's offered? I'm looking at the website and it dates back to 2024 dates as to whether or not they're going to have another training.
Director.
Use mic. So it should be out under on our public funds page under public officer training, access to our own training that we've put together that you can take electronically, as well as a list of the other entities' trainings that's been approved.
Follow up.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just quick follow-up statement. I'm looking on your website and under the frequently asked questions, the last time it was updated was August of 2023. So maybe an update's needed.
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Williams, we can send you a link to that list. What's on the website should be all the current entities who we've approved to give training. We are in, and maybe we've completed that, recently did updates to our own training that we offer. But I can get you a link to all the entities that are approved to provide training.
Thank you.
I had a question, and number one, I appreciate what WHAM is doing for its members. I think a clearinghouse where you don't have the turnover, where it's definitely beneficial to smaller towns. But as we see more, and I'm looking at the list here of reports and compliances, improvement service districts, water districts, water and sewer, joint powers boards. What what is your position on cities and counties? And I don't know if we have anybody from WCCA here, but what is your opinion on the number of districts that we grant that don't have the resources and don't have the expertise, and should those be being incorporated through a shared expense with the counties, cities, and towns, and annexation or other things, rather than continuously grow our smaller entities that sometimes can't plan for replacement costs or even audits? What is your opinion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a great question and something that we're trying to grow into. We're trying to get our program off the ground for the 99 cities and towns, and having Shari on board has been wonderful because she sees when they hit that non-compliance, she's immediately on the phone. She's seeing who's delayed, and we're trying to not be in front of you again or be subpoenaed again. So we can be proactive for them and help them, when we see something bubbling, make sure we take care of that. So I think as we get that figured out, I've already been in contact with Director Ryman at WCCA of, let's see how this program goes. Is there a joint venture we could, he can kind of mimic what I'm doing to get off the ground. And then potentially that, go down to the special districts. The special districts are definitely on our list, and just in the legislative work I've done in the last 20 years, I know they're problem childs, but it is because of lack of funding. So yes, that's the goal. We would love to help them out, but we got to crawl before we're walking, running, if that makes sense. So I think that could evolve.
It does. And just to follow up, with your dues, and now this is a contract for service, basically, do you see smaller towns being able to provide you with the funding necessary to accomplish this?
Mr. Chairman, we believe, and Shari probably can speak better to this, that we're providing way more bang than a buck than them contracting out a house, because she has that institutional knowledge, and the people that we're hiring have that knowledge where they can hit the ground running and try to fix it quickly, and then hopefully turn it back over to them. A lot of the services we do offer, though, are part of their regular membership. So if City of Sheridan, who's a little bit more complex and has more staff and the ability to do these things, could call Shari and be like, hey, can you proof this grant? Hey, what's this process? Hey, I can't find this on Department of Audit. So there's a lot of that she could speak more to the day-to-day of just the questions I even help answer, anybody in our office answers, that we're trying to work through, along with then if we're just like crowdfunding basically a clerk or treasurer till they can find that expertise, or find a CPA. Like that's the biggest problem of why we stood it up, is because there's just not even statewide, nationally,
Right.
that ability.
Okay, well, this will segue into your testimony very well. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shari Lara. Prior to my 19 years at the City of Lander, I spent 20 years in public accounting, so I am the true definition of a numbers nerd. My problem with the F-66 when I was with the City of Lander is our auditors didn't come until October. So you're still paying bills, you're still booking your accruals. I was a one-person show, and I was doing it at 9:30 on 9:30 because I was barely getting my books done just to get ready for my auditor to be there. So it's a lot of work, especially when you're a one-person show, to make that deadline. It would be nice if that deadline, if you had an audit, that it could be extended out to not be the 9:30, because most municipalities aren't seeing their auditor till October or later. So making that, you've not had any journal entries from your auditor. So if you had any material misstatements, you are filing your F-66 incorrectly, because then when your auditor comes in and they give you your final audit journal entries, it could make a material change to what you filed on your F-66. That was one problem. The cost of an audit for the City of Lander is $65,000. That was me drafting, me doing all the work papers, me doing most of it for $65,000. Sheridan paid $125,000 for their audit. So we're talking for these large municipalities to get this third-party document a lot of money. So if the F-66, if the Department of Audit, if you had to have a review or an audit and you could just submit your audit instead of doing the F-66, that would be a great savings. Because so many people are already paying big dollars to get that done. So if you could just submit that instead of doing F-66, that would be great. Now, speaking of the small towns, you're getting big turnover. You're getting paid $12 to $17 an hour. That's what these clerks are making because they're not working full time. And you're asking them to know how to do and understand a financial statement and a balance sheet and then produce a document. And they have absolutely no experience with numbers whatsoever. What I'm finding is municipalities, and these are small towns, their balance sheet is a mess. And if they can't understand their financial statement, they can't understand their balance sheet, they don't understand their profit and loss, so they don't even know if their numbers are correct. I'm old school. I learned accounting on the T-bar system, so I know if I want a journal entry where I'm going to see it end up. Computerized accounting it's a leap of faith. I'm going to input this and it's going to end up where it is, and so be it. So they don't understand what they're looking at. I've had to do major cleanup on balance sheets just because they have old liabilities and things sitting out there that have been out there for years. So this year I'll be interested to see how the F-66 turns out on some of these because it was a messy set of books. I can understand the F-66 for small municipalities, especially for the separation of duties, because most of the time you got a one-person show in there, and it's darn hard to have that separation of duties. I totally understand that part. I'm hoping those are most of the people that have signed up for WAM services is to get their F-66 done. But I answer questions just from clerks asking basic accounting questions. Midwest is getting their first, or Edgerton's getting their first SLIB loan. She didn't know she had to set up an income and an expense line item. She was going to net the two numbers. Well, then that makes their F-66 not turn out. There's just basics, very basic accounting questions that I guess I get asked all the time, even from mayors calling and asking. I actually answer so many questions that are not accounting questions just because they know I was in local government. Do I need to do this by resolution? Do I need to do this? How do I handle this? I think this will grow fast. I've only been doing this since January. I think we're going to hit it and ready. I'm actually probably going to be taking on a city pretty soon that has some problems with it. I wrote the SLIB grant for Lander for $45 million. So I've written grants. I'm helping municipalities start writing grants because these small towns need money. But even that, just to do the compliance, to fill out the grant paperwork, they don't have the access or the dollars to be able to do that. So they're more than willing to pay WAM's cost to help get a grant and do the grant reimbursement forms because they don't have the expertise for it. I would just like to see, I just got to imagine that there's got to be software out there that we could print a trial balance for municipalities, import it into software, and have AI do all of your, does this balance, because you're not even seeing the balance sheets of these towns and cities, and they're a mess. And that's what I find just so amazing, that I know darn good and well their F-66s didn't balance because their balance sheets are a mess. That there has to be software, something out there. I think looking at a trial balance of a municipality would be much more effective for looking at whether we have fraud or errors. If the Department of Audit could find something that utilized that. I don't know how you feel about that. I didn't ask, but.
Yeah, through the chair. Director, do you have a comment on on that?
Mr. Chairman, so what we collect is driven by statute. And then for us to implement software would require an appropriation by you guys. So for that to be a possibility would have to be something that worked through the legislature.
Where do you see that being appropriate, I guess? Because it does sound good that you can take all these different entities and somehow have a clearinghouse that puts it into a readable form, the F-66, to send on to the department. So would you say that that's a function that the state should coordinate, or that maybe WAM should coordinate? Where do you see that falling in line of the chain?
Mr. Chairman, I think it could be a collaborative effort. I think as auditors, we would be on board if we could have a central accounting system, because then then the information's just there and it can be pulled. That's been a conversation in some years in the legislature in the past of, maybe leveraging the state's Wolf system. There's challenges to that, particularly for smaller entities. But I think from an audit standpoint and a reporting standpoint, if we could get to the point where there was one accounting system that all the government entities used, that would help address a lot of issues as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I went on a mission 2 years ago when Representative Locke and I were trying to work through property tax reductions and what it looked like for municipal reductions for municipal budgets, because all 99 are very different. We talked about today the cash versus accrual. And so Representative Locke was trying to compare apples to oranges with the numbers that were out there on each municipal website. And I was along the journey was realizing, well, we're not talking the same thing here. And so what we've done, and it's taken longer to do because it's so complex, and the beauty about municipal accounting is it's different for all 99 depending on what enterprises and services that the community wants to stand up. But we have created a municipal finance data book, and the reason we haven't released it yet is we're waiting till the end of this fiscal year, which will be June 30th. And Shari's about ready to plug in all those numbers. And before we did budgets, but we want to show actuals, and it's going to be in the same tone, working from the same page, because LSO only usually goes to county level. We want to be able to have that for you guys so you can see the municipal apples to apples. And we've got a really cool plug with that coming. Now, with that said, it's not it's a nice airbook table, but it's not complex to do the accounting, but I think it's a step in the right direction to show that technology can help get us there.
Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Herbstreet, right, I'm going to come off of the answer that you just gave. When you just said that it's different for all 99 municipalities, but when we're talking about a central accounting system, how do the two compute when we need technology to do all of it the same for 99, yet it's different?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, and I'll ask my phone a friend Shari here. So I have 3 of them up here. I think one of the things with the plugs we were looking at before is that so Sundance General Fund looked off because it had a business ready community grant come through its general fund, right? And so we had to build in another line item that showed grants income. And so and I think in the current forms, there's just not all those extra like miscellaneous things that might be happening within them that we could help provide what the choose your own adventure template would be like.
The other thing that makes it, well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the other thing that makes the Department of Audit releases the cost of government report, and it compares. I used to give it to my council, and I quit giving it to my council because the first thing they would do was they'd look at the city of Riverton and they'd look at the city of Lander and they'd say, why is it water costs more in Lander than it does in Riverton? Well, and Riverton is larger. Well, Lander has a water treatment facility, Riverton runs on wells. Then they say, well, why is the taxes different? Lander runs a fire department, a cemetery, Riverton runs those in districts. So regardless of how you look at it, you won't be able to see that in that data. I mean, the data will be there, the numbers will be there, but if you're trying to look at municipalities and compare municipalities, they're never going to be the same because of the operations and how they're run and whether they have districts or whether they have, you know, a water treatment plant or a sewers treatment plant facility. So I actually did not like that report for that reason. It's good just to look at the information, but even as my council, they knew darn good and well, we funded fire department, we funded cemetery, but they'd ask every time, why was it more expensive than Riverton was?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, I think also one thing that we've been working with Department of Audit and their cost of government and their dashboard that they've been working on is to honestly, I hate saying it this way, but it is the truth. You have to tell the story or explain what makes them unique through footnoting and being able to explain why there's nuances.
Yes, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Laura, when you were speaking to us, you were talking about the cost of the budgets. Could you also talk to me about the size of the budget that you are doing, that you're paying for the CPA report on? For instance, Casper's budget is very large, you know, over $180 million, but our audits cost more than Lander, and more than Sheridan. So is there a relation to the size of budget being audited to the cost of the audit?
Chairman, Representative Lean, there's a few different things. If you're required to have a single audit, which means if you expended more than $1 million of federal funds, then a single audit adds to the cost of just an audit. Also, I know that our auditor, depending on the experience of the person that was doing the work papers and giving the trial balance, that played a part in it, because if they had somebody that didn't have the experience and they knew they were going to come in, have to do all the journal entries and a bunch of cleanup, they're going to charge you for it. I'm sure Lander's audit will go up in price just because I had worked with them for so many years and I knew what they needed and had it all ready, that they weren't having to come back and ask for it. But like the town of Hudson, they're working on a $400,000 budget. Didn't know how to do the F-66 3 years ago. They paid the auditor $18,000 to just do cleanup, because the auditor's not going to do the F-66 without looking at their books and doing some cleanup. So the auditor charged them $18,000 to do the cleanup and to do the F-66. So then the next 2 years, just because in Fremont County, we have the Association of Governments and we help each other out. I went there on September 30th just to do their F-66. I did not clean up their books. I told them, your books are not clean. You have journal entries that need to happen before your F-66, but did their F-66. I since now have cleaned up their set of books and their journal entry and cleaned up their balance sheets. But yeah, that's what these little towns are paying. And they're not even required to, but they just don't have somebody sitting in that seat to be able to complete that F-66 form.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for your patience. You have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Laura, I appreciate your expertise, and it's something that, as I look at the concerns that are being expressed by the committee and addressed today, it seems that there might be a bit of a mismatch between what has been put in statute in the past and what is real on the ground, what is right and appropriate for our cities, towns, and counties, but also our special districts to be responsible for. It seems that your experience with many years on the ground doing this work could be beneficial if you were to provide to us, for example, a list of here are 10 smart things that the state of Wyoming could change through statute that would make our Department of Audit's life easier, our cities, towns, and counties' lives easier, because timelines would align appropriately, accounting would align appropriately, and we'd have things right-sized. So my question is, does that make sense to you, that maybe there just are some simple things? You suggested one about allowing for a timeline delay, and what other ideas are there that we should just be implementing through statute so that everybody's lives are a little easier, and also more capable of actually achieving the objectives of transparency that relate to the interest here.
Chairman, Senator, I could give you a lot of good ideas. Having worked with it for so long and now sitting on the different side and looking at these towns and cities and how the skill sets of the people that are being hired to fill these positions are just bodies filling a seat. I think there's a lot that we could change and fix. I mean, one thing, what is it we're trying to, we talk about government transparency. What is it we're trying to show people from collecting this data? Because if a town gets an audit, gets a review done, and it's done by a third party, why is that not sufficient for the Department of Audit to put on their website? Because it's got an opinion letter, it's got their findings, if they had any findings, to show that here, this town is compliant and they did X, Y, Z. It could be a different format for these towns that aren't required, or you require everybody to have a review done, which I don't know that you'll find a CPA firm that would take on, I guess, because some of these are messy. The ones that I've touched are messy accounts, but I definitely think there's a streamlined process that could be done that would be better in showing its transparency. If that's what truly we're trying to show people is a transparency, we're not doing it right now.
Senator, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think you're getting at exactly what we probably need to consider, and that's the fact that, first of all, these statutes weren't necessarily written by anybody that had the expertise and ground experience that you have when they were originally written. And now we're experiencing concerns and we have a lot of history with those statutes. Obviously, our Department of Audit is going to carry those statutes out, and they do a great job of that. But if the statutes aren't asking the right questions and aren't doing the right things, then it's up to us to change those things. So, yeah, it would be very beneficial if it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list. If there are 5 simple things that we could change that would dramatically improve this system, then maybe that's a low-hanging fruit bill, and maybe we can investigate a little bit later. Is that something that perhaps you and WAM could put together and provide us with, looking at statute, and maybe work with the Department of Audit on that? I don't see why we can't have a good, short, kumbaya-ish agreement where everybody thinks it's in the best interest of our cities, towns, and counties.
And I think you're right. I think somebody mentioned this before, that it's a process that we're almost learning to walk again. But that would be a suggestion that I would have, is to have a conglomerate meeting and come up with some simple ideas that we can start off with to make this process better for the future. So any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have one different one, if that's okay. And I don't know if Ms. Laura is familiar with this or not, but it gets to the special districts, and it didn't sound like that was an area where you spent a lot of time and focus, but I don't know who else to ask. And one of my concerns with special districts are if we think that the small cities don't have the expertise or personnel to do what we're asking them to do. An irrigation district, for example, where you've got 5 different irrigators that assembled to figure out how to raise money for an irrigation project 15 years ago or something, is interested in filing a gap approved audit statement and budget every year, has always seemed a little contrary and challenging to me. And I don't know what the right sizing is. We've got some selection there based on the size of the special district. But when I look at that with expenditures, it can just be literally one project that gets paid for over 20 years of assessments. And they might be building up those funds each year to try to move towards that outcome. And really nobody does anything except collect the money until they can spend the money. Do you have any experience with special districts and how they operate and how they file these reports, and maybe the challenges that they experience, particularly the larger projects that might still only be a small handful of non-experts?
Chairman, Senator, I can tell you that the Fremont County Rec Board, who's filling this out are volunteers. They are not looked at for their skill set. Most of them don't have the experience and they're doing it on their own free time, and it's when they get time. That's as much as I can speak to it because I've not worked with a special district except for the Fremont County Rec Board.
Madam Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, Senator, you might have been around and Senator Larson might have been around, and Senator Dockstader I saw was there. There was this special district task force that this committee took on in like 2015, 2016 timeframe. And I know were you around? Yeah, there was.
I think I was on it.
Yeah. Okay. And I feel like from that task force, this is the rehash of what we're talking about now. And there was a lot of really good recommendations, and that might be something to have LSO, and I'm going to apologize in advance for throwing them under the bus, but they could pull those notes out because I think there was some like really great recommendations from that study. And I know that there was a lot of us really disappointed that all that work was done. And then it was kind of like the studies we do sometimes, and then it just kind of got put away. But especially as it relates to special districts, because it's soup to nuts. And I've worked with them and I've served on them. There's just no consistency there. And who do you penalize? The volunteer, right? So.
All right.
Thank you.
Follow-up? That's something I think that we should take a look at from LSO, is that committee that worked on that. So Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for the information. It's been great. Just a quick question. How much resistance is there at the local entities to keep their process, keep their sovereignty versus taking a centralized solution on this? How much resistance is there? I'm not saying it's not a magic bullet, because transitioning to a centralized system will be no easy task. I understand that completely. There's no question. But how much resistance or is there in that? Is there a barrier there? Or are people saying, hey man, if it was centralized and simplified, we'd be happy? What's the general feel out there? I'd love to hear that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Locke, I don't think we've asked that question recently anyway. We talked a couple of years ago through Management Audit Committee about trying to get municipalities on a biennial budget. Most of us run on an annual budget, but trying to match it up with the state and kind of going down that road. And then that kind of again went by the wayside. There's a couple prominent software systems that we use in the state. They're doing black and white accounting, but they look very different. They produce different reports. I don't know that you'd get a lot of pushback, but I think we better ask the question and then we better know what we're looking at cost-wise. And I think we can get an economy of scale on it at the state level. We talked about it in a meeting with Department of Audit a couple of months ago. And that was a concern of theirs. We've got that local decision-making component. And I mean, right, some of those things you'll pry from our cold dead hands, but it's understandable that this makes sense to at least look at it and see where we can get from there.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I would think also that especially our little guys, they just want help. And so if we simplified that for them, that would be easy for the towns. The cities are a little bit more complex. City of Casper is an enterprise, is a multi-million-dollar enterprise, right? Because you're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars. Very, very different than the town of Upton. So there's 19 first-class cities. It would be interesting to see their response versus the towns. I think the towns where we have more issues would be way more compliant to that, if that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, follow up.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes, I've got you next.
Just a quick follow-up, and I clearly can't push the button. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that's something I think we would at least like to get a feel for from everyone, because it's one of those things we don't want to go push on it if all of the entities say no. Local control. We're just trying to understand what the barrier is, if that's a barrier, and how that would work out. I'm not saying that that's a solution, like I said, that's simple, but if that's a solution that starts moving us in that direction, it might be a way to go. So thank you.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. On that point, I think offering the opportunity to go to a common system where cities, towns, and counties voluntarily want to, or even special districts choose to and kind of go into it with their eyes open is likely to be beneficial. But I think requiring a one-size-fits-all solution, again, getting back to the districts, that is what we heard years ago, is that a lot of these districts exist on like one spreadsheet, one Excel sheet. That's the entire district. It's like a handful of people, and it's still millions of dollars because irrigation and drainage projects, waste and sewer can be substantial amounts of money, but not a lot of people and just volunteers that try to meet as infrequently as they possibly are allowed to and can is the interest there. So I think we need to be careful. And I say that, I look at the University of Wyoming. We've done some one-size-fits-all solutions over the years. And if I could travel back in time, I would reverse every one of those decisions about like all of the departments, all the colleges at the university going to a common system. Never seems to go as well as it does when we're talking about it in these meetings. It tends to be lamentable. But if it's just providing an opportunity, a common opportunity for everyone to be on the same system if they choose to, you'll probably get 70 or 75% adoption if it's a good system, maybe more than that. And that obviously already makes everyone's life easier.
Any other questions? Right. Any final comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would just add that that's something we can train too at WAMCAT and WAM. We can offer the opportunity to go to something like that, and then we can train on that. That can be a centralized class that we can get in front of people. So,
Great.
Mr. Chair, I think you would see opposition from the first class cities. The town of Sheridan just paid probably over $125,000 to convert their software. They just did convert. So you would see that. The beauty of the small towns being on the same thing is we could help each other out. The small towns that I'm working with, I put Go to My PC on their PC, so I'm able to log into their computer while they're sitting at their computer and help them real time with their problem that they're having. But if you had the same software for the smaller municipalities, even the turnover, it would be much easier for another town to help a neighboring town because they'd already know the software to just keep them up and going until they did fill a position. Because with the turnover in government employees, that's the hardest thing, is finding the next person and getting your next person trained, because the person that left is not there to train them. Where if the small towns had the same software, it would be real easy. And WAMCAT is a strong organization to help train one another. And then the Department of Audit would also be looking at all the same forms and all the same practices and setups, and they'd be even able to train, if they had to train somebody how to work an accounting system.
Yeah, I've often thought that should be included in the grant request when you go before SLIB, is the ability to audit afterwards. So, and have that money be granted. So, all right. Thank you very much, Director. Do you have any comments with all the questions that came up here?
No, just if any other questions come up, feel free to reach out, and happy to answer any future questions.
All right, we'll clear these seats and then bring up other members of the public that might have a comment. So anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this, just come up and fill the seats here. Right. Yes, go ahead and identify yourself.
Yeah, Chairman, my name is Chris Williams. I actually had a separate public comment beyond this, but if I may, I do have a quick comment based on the commentary from earlier, if that's okay with you.
Go ahead.
I totally agree with Ms. Harpstreet's comment about crawl, walk, run. I've been doing a lot of work on numbers over the last 6 or 7 months, and just to put into context some of the conversation you just had, state and local Wyoming governments collected $105 billion in revenue over the last 7 years. And the small towns, less than 4,000 people, collected 1.3 or $1.4 billion. They were 1% of this broader problem. So I think it's important you guys keep in mind the burden that's being placed on these small towns. At the end of the day, audits are about risk reduction, not risk elimination. It's about risk mitigation. And so as you guys decide how you want to allocate taxpayer resources to audits, which is about fraud, it's not about transparency. It's about how do we eliminate or reduce fraud? Can this state allocate its money in a way that goes after the biggest areas, for lack of a better term, and not to minimize the importance of the small towns and not to minimize the potential of fraud risk that might be in those small towns. But when you're talking $1.4 billion over the course of 7 years on a $105 billion denominator, then you may want to think about that. And then as it relates to the special districts, you have almost 700 special districts spending $9 billion across 7 years. That's a very complicated operating model. And so you may want to think, is it a different operating model for 700 special districts versus the 75 to 100 cities? I understand the concept of one size fits all, et cetera. There's pros and cons to that based on my professional experience, but can we reduce the burden on the small towns and maybe even free up resources that could then go work in the 21 large cities and the 23 counties and the 48 school districts? Anyway, that's my comment there. I appreciate you letting me comment on that. Hopefully that'll give you some perspective as you think about this problem. So Chairman Knapp, members of the Management Audit Committee, again, my name is Chris Williams, so good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. I'm a current member of Dayton, Wyoming, and a former resident of Buffalo, Wyoming. As the committee knows, I sent this committee an email to the chairman of the Management Audit Committee, and I want to make sure that the committee understands that what I'm about to present today, I don't present lightly. I submit this formal complaint based on experience. I have no interest in wasting your time, the Wyoming Department of Audit's time, or Johnson County's time. The purpose of today's public comment is to issue a formal complaint to the Wyoming Management Audit Committee against Johnson County regarding $29,000 in overpayments from Johnson County to contractors. And as we talk about this, think about how this $29,000 maybe could have been redirected into the Treasury Department to solve some of the problems that we were talking about earlier today. To provide some context, to give you a little bit of understanding of my educational and professional background, I have 2 degrees, one in economics and one in finance. And I spent 26 years in the consulting industry managing, either participating in or leading multi-$100-million merger acquisition and core banking transformation programs for large retail banks, and I did this across multiple countries. In these roles, I was heavily involved in contract development and management, invoice management, and payments. And I was, maybe most importantly for this conversation, I was also the treasurer for my church for 3+ years. So I have a lot of sympathy for the comment earlier about the auditors don't show up until October when your fiscal year ends on June 30th. I have a lot of sympathy for that. All of that to say, I have educational and professional background in audits, contracts, invoices, and payment transactions. When I originally learned in 2023 that Johnson County had 6 straight years of failed audits documented by its independent third-party auditor, I decided to do further research on Johnson County's financial management. Since 2023, Johnson County has had 3 more straight years of failed audits for a total of 9 straight years. And my opinion is this goes above and beyond not having knowledge of GAAP, things like that. These findings go beyond GAAP-related issues. And so these 9 straight years span from FY17 to FY25. I should have mentioned before I started that I actually sent the committee a soft copy of my public comments. So if you happen to have your computer, you can read them now, or you can read them later when you have a chance. On August 12, 2023, the current director of the Department of Audit told me that Johnson County's lack of internal controls documented by the independent third-party auditor increases the risk of fraud. And ultimately, that's what this conversation is all about. Since the director confirmed to me that Johnson County has a lack of internal controls and that a lack of internal controls increases the risk of fraud, I felt this research was necessary. After reviewing the contracts, invoices, general ledger transactions, and license surveys, I believe, based on my professional and educational experience, there were $29,000 in overpayments to 2 contractors for Johnson County. In addition to these overpayments, one of the license surveys of the gravel pit was completed 23 months after the invoice was submitted, and 2 invoices were submitted by the contractor to Johnson County after payments were made by Johnson County to the contractor. On February 20th, 2026, I issued a formal email complaint to the director of the Department of Audit, and I copied one of the deputy prosecuting attorneys of Johnson County and the chairman of the Wyoming Management Audit Committee. In this February 2026 complaint, I provided the director of the Wyoming Department of Audit specific details supporting this complaint. I included copies of the contracts, invoices, payment amounts, and license surveys obtained through Johnson County public record requests. The reason I copied one of the deputy prosecuting attorneys of Johnson County is because that deputy prosecuting attorney from Johnson County was responsible for providing the public records that were requested in the research. I felt the individual who was responsible for providing these record requests should be aware of the findings from the public record requests. On May 27th, 2026, more than 3 months after my formal complaint to the director of the Wyoming Department of Audit, the director had not responded to the February 2026 formal complaint. Therefore, I naturally assumed the director was not interested in following through on this formal complaint with the evidence documented in the contracts, invoices, license surveys, and payment details. Therefore, on May 27, 2026, I forwarded my February 20th complaint to the chairman of the Wyoming Management Audit Committee and all members of the Management Audit Committee. The email on May 27, 2026 that I forwarded to the Wyoming Management Audit Committee included my February 20th email and the accompanying details on Johnson County's audit issues documented over the last 9 years. All of that to say, all of this information is a public record and has been sent to, from my estimation, to all the people who should be interested in this topic. In the interest of respecting the time of the committee, and in the interest of respecting the time to other members of the public who may also have public comment today, I will refrain from getting into the specific details outlined in the formal complaint, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Since the director has chosen not to respond to this formal complaint, I'm hopeful that someone in Wyoming's legislative or executive branch will formally investigate this complaint. In closing, and to me, this I believe is maybe the most important comment I hopefully will make here. I believe accurate spending of finite taxpayer resources is important. My assumption would be that 9 straight years of failed audits and overpayments to contractors deserves attention by the Wyoming Department of Audit and the Management Audit Committee. Overpayments does not just affect taxpayers. Everybody always believes that fraud only affects taxpayers. My belief is that overpayments or fraud also affects the government. Let me repeat that. Fraud also affects the government. We continue to hear every day that our state and local governments do not have enough funding. Therefore, if this $29,000 was overpaid to these 2 vendors, could those excess funds have been redirected to the Treasury office in Johnson County to help with their skill set, with the audit requirements placed on that county? Is it not in Johnson County's best interest to confirm if this truly was an overpayment and if that money should be returned to Johnson County's general fund to support its essential goods and services? So, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I thank you for your time and your consideration of this formal complaint. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Questions? Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Williams, for this information. A question for you, since this entity has failed audits for 9 straight years, if I understood it correctly, does that, you obviously having dug into numbers here, the question is, do you believe that these failed audits and these inadequate controls, let me say that, and if that's an incorrect statement, that I apologize, but do you believe that leaves an open question as to whether there are other things that could have been missed, may not have been found beyond the 29,000? I'd just be curious if you believe, how much you believe that these failed audits and potentially lack of controls may be hiding, or you're unable to uncover potentially further issues that may exist. I'd be curious of your thoughts on that, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Locke, two answers. Sorry, my mind's slipping a little bit here. It's not so much what I believe. First of all, these are observations documented by an independent third-party auditor. So these are not, quote, my observations. Second of all, I go based on comments made to me in a recorded conversation by the director of the Department of Audit that a lack of internal controls increases the risk of fraud. And so one would hope, based on Wyoming statute in Titles 9 and 16, there's some pretty clear requirements in there that would be followed up on by the management body and by the Wyoming Department of Audit. So I'll leave my comments there. These are independent third-party comments, and these are comments from the Wyoming director, the director of the Wyoming Department of Audit.
Follow up? Any other questions? So I think did you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Williams. And thank you for the information. In your findings, could you tell me, do you recall who it was that issued the payments, the overpayments?
Mr. Williams?
Chairman Knapp, Representative Lean, is your question, who in Johnson County actually signed the check to issue the payment?
Mr. Chairman.
Follow.
Yes, Mr. Williams. One, what I would like to know is, if you recall, if not,
Yeah.
I can look through documentation. Was it the county clerk that took on the initial payments? Was there another entity like Road and Bridge that made those payments? Or was it through a special district that these payments, overpayments were made?
Chairman Knapp, Representative Lean, it's in the contents of the public record request, but I do not recall who approved the invoices and then who wrote the check. So it's a two-part process. You have to approve the invoice, or the invoice has to be sent to the county, and then somebody in the county has to approve the invoice. It's in the public record request. I don't recall off the top of my head who that was, or which part of the county that was, and then somebody actually has to write the check as a part of that process. And I do not have that information.
Any other questions? I have a comment, and then if you
Sure.
you could give your reply, but, so this committee, which we've dealt with even this last interim, is tasked with looking at the legislation that has been put forth in the past and statutes and the function of our administration to see if things are operating as intended. And if not, what can we do to improve the process, improve the audits? But we don't find ourselves being an enforcement body per se. It is looking at what we can improve in the structure and the process. I understand you submitted that to your county attorney's office. It was deputy county attorney, I guess.
So Chairman Knapp, the public record request officially goes to the county clerk, and then the county clerk, in this case, the deputy prosecuting attorney, for lack of a better term, inserted themselves into the process to oversee the fulfillment of that process.
Okay. And then even through our Department of Audit, one of the frustrations I have found is the limited number of tools that they're given to follow up on specifics, other than to forward to the Attorney General's office, or some authority that has the accountability and enforcement. Now, we've heard about being able to do fines or cutting off sales tax in instances where there is malfeasance, perhaps. That moves on to an enforcement body per se. But your testimony is important because it illustrates, I think, the ability for us to improve a process that obviously is not working, whether it's because a complaint is not followed through as far as documented, answered, things like that. But we certainly will look at that as we kind of open the door into this auditing process, what can make it better, and where those penalties or where those accountability fit into the structure. So just a comment.
Thank you.
For you.
I appreciate that.
Representative Rodriguez Williams, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Williams, just a brief question. On your public records requests, I know that we got several attachments from you. Did any of them disclose that Department of Audit was working with Johnson County to address any of their audit issues?
Mr. Williams.
So Chairman Knapp, Representative Williams, I think there's two parts to that question. So as it relates to the public record request associated with the contracts, invoices, payments, et cetera, There was no need to involve the Department of Audit in that process. This was just a standard public records request. And then I took the time to review that and came across what I believe were the right findings, and then shared that with the director. And then after February 20th, when I reported that to the director, there's been no correspondence. So if there has been correspondence, I would not have seen that. As it relates to the 9 failed audits, I can tell you from public record requests between Johnson County and the Wyoming Department of Audit back in 2024, when the Attorney General told us that, the former Attorney General told us that the Wyoming Department of Audit was working with Johnson County, that there was no correspondence, email correspondence between the Wyoming Department of Audit and Johnson County to resolve the issues as identified by the former Attorney General.
Follow up? And I'm going to ask the director to please come back up just as a process question that I have in an issue concerning this type of complaint. Director Chavez, thank you. So my question is, we talked about enforcement before and kind of the lack of that ability. In a situation like this, what would the process entail in getting a formal complaint like that? Would you forward that on to the Attorney General or the local prosecutor? What exactly would the Department of Audit do?
So in this case, Mr. Chairman, so in this case with Johnson County, we had multiple meetings between ourselves and the Attorney General's office discussing the various issues with their audits and other issues that Chris brought up. We also had phone calls back and forth between our office and Johnson County. And then we also actually physically met in person with Johnson County officials to talk about the issues. But ultimately, in our meetings with the AG's office, we said, here's, after consultation, here's probably what are statutory violations.
And did you receive a response? Do you get a formal response from the Attorney General's office, or how does that work?
Nothing other than probably an email acknowledgement. So,
all right, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator McEwen.
Mr. Chairman, may I quickly respond to that, or should I wait until after Senator McKeon?
Let's hear the question first.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so these conversations which the director just alluded to would have taken place 3 years ago, and there have since been 3 more straight years of failed audits. So the question then becomes, if these conversations are taking place between Johnson County and the Department of Audit, why do the same issues continue to come up? And my second comment is, it sounds like everything was handled in person and on the phone, which might explain why the public record request for electronic communications did not present any emails or documentation. And one would think if you are working with a county to resolve their issues, that there would be a Word document, a PowerPoint document, a document of some kind to confirm that coordination to, quote, resolve these issues. So that's my comment there.
Okay, and your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I think I'm hearing is everybody definitely agrees that there was a $29,000 overpayment. That's my first question. Is that true?
Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, I would say we don't agree with that. We did follow up on the complaint. We did meet with the deputy attorney to talk about the situation. And then we also followed up with the county's CPA firm who did audit these invoices back in 2020. So part of the problem is the survey was not used as the basis for the invoices. That's why it's 18 months after the invoices. So at the time of the invoices, they determined the amount of crushed aggregate by weight, and then used the weight to determine that they had their the amount of cubic yards. So because there was they used weight, at that point, the CPA firm audited that. They did their own survey to substantiate the invoices. So where we're at is the CPA firm already verified that those invoices are supported. And so our determination is we don't need to do additional work.
Follow up.
So there was no evidence of a double payment?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, we're satisfied that the invoices were accurate and the payment was accurate.
Thank you.
And just to follow up, so with the CPA firm looking back on that, would there be documentation that they have looked at it, found the justification that could have been forwarded on to Mr. Williams in that request?
Mr. Chairman, they would have work papers, depending on their retention schedule, whether or not they still have them. I can't speak to that, but the CPA firm itself probably would not forward on work papers to anybody other than their client.
Okay. Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Director Chavez, my question is this the same auditor that has continually taken on Johnson County audits for the last 9 years?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, yes.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Yes.
Director, is there a point in time where statutorily an entity may no longer use an auditor if they are not in compliance for X number of years? And then, let me reword this for you. Thank you for your patience. So this auditor has said that they're non-compliant for 9 years. We now have a formal complaint over discrepancy in payment, potentially more if we start digging into other payments that are made by this county. Maybe not. Maybe they're all fine and dandy. Is there any statutory obligation that says that you have to change CPA firms at some point to have a separate set of eyes looking at the books?
Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, no, nothing statute that says you have to change auditors.
Representative Rodriguez Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, you mentioned that your office was satisfied with the outcome regarding the complaint of overpayment. And you also mentioned that you had several conversations with the AG's office regarding the complaint as well. Since you were involved in that complaint and you are satisfied, and we have a citizen in front of our committee today, does your office have a copy of the invoice and of the check that was issued by Johnson County? And could copies be provided to our committee, either from the AG or from your department?
Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Williams, all of that was included in as part of the complaint. Those invoices are part of the complaint.
Follow up. Representative, do you have a follow-up to that?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Director, so if the invoices are included as part of the complaint, what about copies of the checks issued by Johnson County to the vendor?
Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Williams, we don't have copies of the checks. We could, I mean, it's in their GL, but we don't have copies of it because it's already been audited. And so our determination is that we don't need to do any follow-up.
And I guess I just have a follow-up to that. Would it not be helpful if this was a formal complaint and you did receive confirmation by the CPA firm to have that documented?
Michelle, can you repeat the question?
Oh, I just wondering, I know you've got the invoices, there's copies of the checks or whatever, but as this was looked at by the CPA firm to go backwards and ensure that this was not a fraudulent payment, I guess I would say, would it not be helpful for the department to have that justification documented just in case there is follow-up to a formal complaint?
I believe we do have the auditor that followed up does have a memo essentially.
Okay, and I don't mean to interject there, Representative Rodriguez-Williams, but that to me is kind of what you're looking for is if this was resolved, is there documentation of that resolution?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have a formal complaint in front of this committee, and I think if we had not only copies of the invoice, but copies of, taxpayer funding that was used through a subdivision of the state, it would be helpful, I think, to put everybody's mind at ease. And if there was, in fact, an open investigation or some sort of inquiry that was made through the AG's office, I would think that our committee would be entitled to some sort of proof of what how that payment was made through Johnson County, to put all of our minds at ease and our constituent that's in front of the committee today.
Mr. Director, and I'm going to add to that, is there a formal process written of a complaint that would come in and how that's handled and documented? I know there's a district up in our neck of the woods that there's been some question too for donating to nonprofits or money to nonprofits. Is there a specific process that's in place that we can go to, or do we need to set that system up?
Mr. Chairman, so we've recently put into place a process where we go through and we evaluate complaints that come in and determine, does it fall under our purview? We get a lot of complaints that don't. A lot of people think we're the everything police, and statute just doesn't give us that authority. So we go through and we evaluate, hey, does it fall under our authority? And then we evaluate, what if any follow-up we need to do. Does it essentially, is it something that we are going to divert resources from other areas that we're working on to take a look at? As far as Representative Williams' question, so this particular complaint hasn't been run through the AG's office because we've determined that we're satisfied that there was no overpayment. What we did talk with the AG's office about was their CPA audit issues and potential statutory violations.
Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Chavez, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you just say that this particular complaint has not been put through the Attorney General's office?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, correct, because we've determined that it's been audited and there was no overpayment. If we had determined that there was an overpayment or fraud, then we would refer that.
Follow.
Yes, follow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier in your testimony, Mr. Chavez, did you tell the committee that you had spoken with the director with the Attorney General's office about this formal complaint?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lee, no, the deputy attorney for Johnson County.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we talked about this process. The one piece that I'm missing here, what's the reporting back requirement to the person making the complaint? That piece I haven't heard. Sounds like you resolved it, you're comfortable. What's the reporting piece back to somebody who's done a lot of homework here? I would like to understand what's your requirement, what's the process look like, and what was done? Thank
Director
you.
Chavez.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Locke, we don't have anything formal right now for closing that loop, I guess.
Yes, Representative Locke.
So in this case, the loop was not closed. Is that true?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Locke, correct.
Follow up. All right, other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
So the loop has not been finalized. So are we anticipating some more communication to somebody that's sitting right next to you of a complaint? Is there something coming from the department?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, we can, yeah.
And follow up, just as suggestions, you talked about working on this process of having how to deal with a formal complaint, how that's forwarded. And that would probably be a piece that I would add in there is how the loop is closed and resolution is confirmed to the complaint. So yes, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would add to that, in most cases, if a person makes a complaint like this, they've done some digging. So I think the response has to be more than, hey, we're satisfied. I think it needs to have sufficient detail and content so a person can say, well, that makes sense or that doesn't make sense, to make sure we do that. I would just like to throw that out, that closing the loop has to have sufficient data. Thank you.
Mr. Director, comment?
Mr. Chairman, sure.
Yes, Co-Chairman.
I'm sorry to keep beating this horse, but he's put a lot of equity out and he needs a good response.
I agree.
I had one question to follow up on all this. So there are a lot of, I'm sure you do get a lot of complaints. Do you feel that your authority is limited to many of those? How often do you pass on information to the Attorney General or to local prosecutors? Do you feel that you need more teeth or more authority? Or is this something that you don't feel is in the purview of the Department of Audit?
Mr. Chairman, I think we can always refer stuff to law enforcement or the AG if we feel it's necessary. Like I say, I think a lot of the stuff that comes to us isn't under our purview because ours is finances, and we get a lot of complaints that don't have anything to do with finances. So when it comes to finances, if we determine that there's legal action that needs to be taken, we can refer that to the AG's office or DCI, and we do.
All right, thank you. Mr. Williams, do you have any other comments or questions? Or, sorry, comments. You don't get to necessarily ask questions.
Chairman Knapp, yes, I do. So based on what I heard, and I may have heard it incorrectly, that license surveys, which is what was documented in the contracts, is how the county would determine the invoice amounts, license surveys. But the director just said that weight amounts were used and that a review of the weight amounts confirmed that the invoice amounts were correct. As a result of the director's statements today, I would like to say that I will be submitting 3 public record requests to the Department of Audit and to Johnson County. Number 1 is, if there was weight amounts, there would be a document from 2020 and 2021 that would show those weight amounts. And so if a CPA did do the right comparison, they would have a physical piece of paper in front of them showing those weight amounts. So I'm going to be doing a public record request on weight amounts. And then I'm also going to be doing correspondence between the DOA and the CPA in my professional experience, it is highly unlikely that a CPA between February of this year and today would have gotten involved in something of this small magnitude. So I find it very curious that a CPA was brought in. Remember, CPAs cost a lot of money and our counties don't have any money. So why was a CPA brought in to do this? And then I'm going to see what correspondence, electronic, emails, Word documents, et cetera, between Johnson County and the DOA between February 20th of this year and today to affirm the statements that were made today. Thank you.
Yep. And again, because this committee deals with the process, I would say the director has said that those documents exist as far as the CPA was concerned, that they felt it met the standard of payment. If you do file complaints, I would also just refer you to both the Board of County Commissioners,
Yep.
The county attorney
Yep.
of the county, and then probably a letter to the Attorney General so that you receive their response directly.
Chairman Knapp, in regards to the Attorney General makes it very clear on the website that private citizens are not allowed to contact the Attorney General on topics like this. So any correspondence going forward would be just with the county commissioners and the county attorney.
Okay. Thank you for your interest in it. And
thank you for your time.
Transparency exists in payments of government entities to vendors.
Thank you.
Representative Rodriguez Williams, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just one more question for the director regarding one of his statements. You mentioned that you had talked to the AG about CPA audit issues and potential violations. Just speaking on a more broader level, when you do encounter CPA audit issues, is there some sort of process in place that you follow to report potential violations or professional conduct concerns?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Williams, yes, we have kind of a tracking, if you will, for if we identify stuff, alerting the Attorney General's office. If it's something, I'll say out of the ordinary, we would just call them.
Mr. Williams, do you have any other comment concerning your email about Campbell County or?
No, sir, not today.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, when we have 9 straight years of failed audits, at what point does your office refer things over to the Attorney General's office?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lee. So it kind of depends on what or when we look at it. So statute requires that we make sure those audits get done, does not require that we examine those audits. And so as a general rule in trying to figure out how to allocate our resources, it's not a regular process to look at those. And then I think it depends on what those issues are. So because historically, there's no action on violations of the Fiscal Procedures Act. I suspect that that's because in order for something to happen, there has to be legal proceedings. So there's for something to happen, someone has to be convicted of knowingly and willingly violating the act. So you have to have legal proceedings. To my knowledge, there never have been any regarding violations of the Fiscal Procedures Act.
Hello?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? All right.
Chairman Knapp, if I may quickly, oops, sorry.
Senator.
I keep interrupting you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to look at something. I mean, they've failed this audit 9 times. 9 times. There's a question about $29,000. It almost appears if they're just laissez-faire about failing the audit. They're not fixing much. I think we need to look at it, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Is there a question in there for the director?
What in your opinion should happen with Johnson County after 9 failed audits?
Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, I think that's a a question for you guys. So the current audit, the audit findings relate directly to not having the requisite accounting experience in-house. And so the audit findings that they have, what the county has basically said is, we have difficulty hiring somebody with the requisite knowledge. We're essentially just going to rely on the auditors to identify the adjustments that need to be made to have our financial statements in accordance with GAAP. So, that's what their issue is. And so I think that's a question for you guys on where do they go from there? It kind of ties into earlier discussion about available resources regarding adequate accounting knowledge. We suggested to them that they contract with a CPA to do their year-end adjustments and prepare their financials. If they were to do that, that CPA would make the exact same adjustments as the auditors are making. Just then there would be no audit findings because it's not the auditors doing it. But if they contracted with somebody, that contracted CPA would do the exact same work.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the 9 failed audits, how many of them were ever caught up to standard?
Director.
In other words, year 1, we failed. Year 2, we failed. Did we fix year 1 and year 2? Year 8, we failed. Did we fix that in year 9?
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, so some of the issues have been corrected over time. The common ones, the ones related to making adjustments for GAAP, those persist because the county has said, we're just going to accept the auditors doing that because we've had trouble hiring someone with the appropriate knowledge. So that's going to persist unless or until they are able to hire somebody with that knowledge or able to contract with somebody.
Yes, follow up.
It seems to me we're going to keep doing these audits and requiring them. We should do something about it, especially after 9 years. I don't know what that exact answer is, but I want to make sure I heard what you said. They just said, well, we have problems with it. We're not going to. Did I hear that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, I don't think I would describe it that way. I think they've said, hey, we've had trouble hiring a person with appropriate knowledge. We're just going to let the auditors identify the adjustments that need to be made in order to have GAAP-based financials.
And they've basically decided that they're going to let that happen year after year after year because there's no real penalty. At what point would you restrict sales tax distribution or to correct that?
Mr. Chairman, so that's not a situation that creates non-compliance in which the funds are withheld. Having audit findings there's nothing in statute that says having audit findings or uncorrected audit findings result in withholding of funds. Only if you haven't reported.
Okay.
One quick follow.
I almost am looking at this like a food inspector. There's thousands of things you can be cited for, but if it's not a serious one, they don't shut the restaurant down.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I kind of guess.
A question?
Why are we requiring this? I mean, and it's more a question for the committee. I'm not trying to pick on you right now.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, I would say that the discussion earlier of if we remove the requirement to have gap-based financials, Johnson County's findings go away with respect to their material audit adjustments.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Williams, you have a comment and
Yes, sir.
oh, I'm sorry, Senator, you have a question first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was just to follow up on that last statement. I think that's an important thing to realize. We heard earlier that the gap-based accounting was a challenge for many locations, and they just can't achieve that threshold. And it sounds like that is the reason that Johnson County is failing and has failed for 9 straight years, because they don't have the capacity and don't want to try to have the capacity to achieve the gap-based accounting. It sounds like it might be cost prohibitive or challenging. Am I understanding that correctly, Director? Is that really the only reason they're failing, is because we've put in place an obligation to achieve gap accounting and they don't have an interest in achieving that due to cost or whatever else? Is that the only reason? And then a corollary to that question is, what is the additional cost? Why don't they want to, or why aren't they trying to adhere to that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, so yes, the material audit adjustments that are being made by the auditor are for making the adjustments necessary for gap. Why they don't, I don't know that it's necessarily a cost-based thing, trying to hire somebody or contract. Hiring is like I said, there's a lack of a lot of knowledgeable people in GAP. Why they haven't contracted, I don't know. They did for a time. And so at the CPA that they had contracted with, if they retired or what, but that went away then. So they haven't gotten back to trying to contract with anybody.
Quick follow-up. So, and I just don't understand really the implications of this in the real world. Is it going to cost them an extra $50,000 or $75,000 to comply with something where there's no penalty if they don't comply? I mean, is that just what's going on? It's a reasonable choice where they're not going to try particularly hard because they don't see an advantage to their people, and there's no penalty for them missing it, or what's going on?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss. So in terms of increased costs, it would be, probably paying high enough to attract somebody with that kind of knowledge, or paying the additional, whatever that would cost for a CPA firm to do your year-end adjustments and prepare your financials. I don't know if it's a cost-based thing, but in terms of anything happening, again, for violations of fiscal procedures, that would require legal proceedings to determine if the act was knowingly and willingly violated.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Williams, you have a final comment?
Chairman Knapp, I do. Audit committee is about fraud. Keep coming back to that, please. On August 10th, 2023, Director Chavez sat at my kitchen table and looked me in the eye and said, the lack of internal controls in Johnson County increases the risk of fraud. He then proceeded to tell me that he was going to go to the Attorney General and share with the Attorney General in 2023 the issues, and then never came back to me on that. So verbatim increases the risk of fraud. He said earlier today in his testimony that moving from GAAP to cash basis essentially reduces your ability to look for fraud. We live in a country of 350 million people. There are people with bookkeeping experience that can be out there. Johnson County has a $38 million cash reserve budget, or cash reserve account. Johnson County has plenty of money to hire skilled resources to do this. He said that if they hire people with GAAP experience, all of Johnson County's issues go away. I do not believe that statement is accurate. If you look at the audits, material weaknesses in internal controls, COVID money in FY21, $180,000 that was verbally agreed to with local businesses that did not have documentation supporting the federal requirements for how that $180,000 would be distributed. These are independent auditor observations. These are not my observations. So to sit here and look you in the face and say, Johnson County's issues go away, I don't understand how that's possible. The audits say the financial staff need training. 9 straight years of that, yet they've never gone out and trained their resources. And because of that, in the director's own words, there is an increased risk of fraud, in this case, in Johnson County. I can give you multiple other counties in this state where this same problem exists. Wyoming brought in $105 billion in revenue over the last 7 years. There's not a company on the planet that brought in $105 billion in revenue over the last 7 years and doesn't have some level of fraud. Taxpayers are tired of giving their money and knowing that it's being distributed properly. It's not possible. So to say things go away, I can't get my head around that. Thank you, Chairman Knapp.
Thank you. Director.
So I'll just clarify, I didn't say all their issues go away. The findings in their audit related to personnel who don't have the requisite experience and the material audit adjustments related to GAAP, those go away if there's no requirement to report under GAAP, because those 2 findings speak directly to experience with GAAP. I didn't say all their issues go away.
My
These
apologies.
2 findings go away.
Thank you, Director. Is there anybody else in the room with any public comments on this issue? All right, anybody online?
Mr. Chairman, nobody's online for this.
Okay, so obviously the process with this effort by WHAM, I think effort in talking to the department, the lack of what I would say enforceability or any accountability to that needs to be addressed. What is the direction of the committee? Representative Lean.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Chairman. As I took a moment to sit here and scribble some notes, I know that this committee seeks oversight in principles and practices and implementation of the law. We are here to talk about fraud because fraud is defined as fraud has a definition of deception, trickery, or false representation. In testimony today, we heard that the books are messy. There's a lack of skill sets, that we hire bodies to just fill seats. We heard from a director that said that he visited with the AG's office over some issues, but not others. And we have a question about the gap, the general accounting practices. But why would we move away from those and lower the bar? In Wyoming, we take pride in our work, we ride for the brand, and we are tough but fair. So it's with that, Mr. Chairman, that I ask that this committee consider the motion that we ask LSO with some leeway and grace, I don't have exact wording for you, but that we produce audit findings that are non-compliant, that are consecutive years, to withhold the sales and use tax and sales use tax and lodging taxes until in full compliance with a CPA audit.
And you'd like to see that in information or in draft?
In draft form, please.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Did staff get that okay? All right. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Rothfuss.
is that a bill draft request? I don't think I understand the motion.
Representative Lean, would you repeat that
Yes.
as your bill draft?
Mr. Chairman, the motion on the floor would be to amend the statutes that we currently have so that all sales use and lodging taxes are withheld until the compliance of the audit and, forgive me, I forgot the words, the suggestions that you make are adhered to until they're made whole.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So it's
just 1 second. I had one question on that.
Go
Was there a year limit? Was it a 3-year limit, or was it what's the limit on triggering that?
Mr. Chairman, that's a great idea. Let's go with a 3-year limit as a placeholder, open to ideas from the committee.
All right, thank you. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's not our money to withhold, it's the people's money. And the idea that if the government is behaving badly, that the state of Wyoming should withhold the people's money that they need for services so that they can have a police force, so that they can have a fire department, so that they can have roads and everything else that those dollars go to, just isn't the appropriate enforcement mechanism. And I realize we have that on the book elsewhere, and it's probably the reason why it doesn't get used very often, because it just doesn't appropriately strike the it's not an appropriate stick, I guess, nor is it any type of carrot. So if the desire is to ensure that entities are obligated to uphold, I understand that interest, so that they have to have a CPA and they have, a CPA approved audit, and it has to be on an annual basis where they have to meet that approval. I can understand that interest. It's the enforcement mechanism, though. It's punishing the public for their elected officials' failures, or assuming they're even elected officials. They might just be hired and failed. I don't know why that is an appropriate enforcement mechanism, and maybe there are alternatives. I don't know what those might be. That's perhaps a question we could ask the Department of Audit, is what alternatives we could use to enforce it. But I'm very concerned about the enforcement mechanism with this. I don't want to punish the public because they happen to live in a community where somebody didn't follow through on an audit.
Mr. Director, what triggers that now, that withholding?
Mr. Chairman, one of these days I'll remember to push that button. So currently, it's non-compliance with reporting requirements. So the census report that the entities have to fill out. So whether it be the F-66, whether it be the F-32, whether it be the follow-up paperwork that's required for special districts based on revenue and expenditure levels, and whether or not they have their audit report in on time.
And is that a one-time deadline or is it over multiple years?
So each year that deadline is for that year. So for example, coming into this year for September 30th of this year, everybody's census reports will be due for FY26. If we're missing stuff from the previous year, they still are carried as non-compliant.
So we do that now simply for a deadline miss.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
if it's a missed deadline, then funds are withheld
Okay.
for reporting.
Okay.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, follow up on that. And could we ask,
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trying to wrap my head around this. I really am. So if they turn in an F-66 on time, but it's not accurate, it's okay.
Mr. Chairman,
And
Senator,
that's a step too far, but if they're failing the audit,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Director.
Senator McCown. So I wouldn't say it's okay. Statute doesn't provide for any effect if the census report is not accurate. Now, I will say for our part, when we get those census reports, we review those because those are all the basis that's used for the statutorily required cost of government report. So when we get those, we review those. And if we see stuff that is missing, out of place, we'll look from year to year. So if things seem to be outliers, we will then go back to that entity and say, hey, you're missing stuff, this doesn't look right, and have some corrections. But to your original question, statute doesn't provide for anything for withholding of anything based on accuracy.
if I wanted statute to say it had to be accurate, can you give me some suggestions on words or how we go about it?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCown, we could give that some thought. The difficulty I would say is you don't really know if that census report is accurate without doing an audit. And so we do what we can to determine if data is missing, if data looks wrong, but you can't really determine if that information is accurate without doing an audit. And so it's not uncommon when we do audits of these entities to determine that what they reported was not accurate, but that we can't determine that unless we do an audit.
All right, other discussion. None? All right, so if you could restate the motion that we're going to be moving forward in draft form so that we can vote on that. LSO, can you kind of summarize what you're looking at?
So, Mr. Chairman, so I had the request as a bill draft that if an entity is non-compliant with audit findings for 3 consecutive years and do not come into compliance, then their sales, use, and lodging taxes would be withheld.
All right, thank you. Does everybody understand the motion? All right, all those in favor of I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry, I just want clarification because so as the statute reads now, in 9-1-507J, the Department of Audit is required to report non-compliant counties, cities, and towns to the State Department of Revenue. And then upon notification, the Department of Revenue is required to withhold monthly disbursements of sales and use tax and lodging until the Department of Audit certifies compliance. So this is already happening on an annual basis.
As I understand, Mr. Director, that's on the time or the turning in of the audit versus material weakness or noncompliance.
Mr. Chairman, correct. That the trigger is whether or not they've submitted the required forms and paperwork. Nothing beyond that. There's nothing in statute that addresses if they have audit findings or accuracy of anything.
All right. Do you have a follow-up on your question, or is that good enough clarification for you? All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Rachel, Miss Rodriguez-Williams, you have your hand up?
Nope, sorry, I forgot to take it down.
You're just high-fiving us. All right. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
Okay, motion carries. Is there any other motions concerning this topic? All right, thank you very much, Director. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
believe Representative Rodriguez-Williams has her hand up again.
Representative Rodriguez-Williams, is this for real this time?
It's for real,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman. I have two motions. I'll start with the first. The first one being on this topic, that we direct LSO to provide a report to us. Just some research on what other states do regarding failed audits. I know we heard a little bit from the director, but just kind of more of a formal response.
okay. All those, discussion on that motion? Or is there a second? We have a second discussion. All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. So LSO, you have that direction. Next motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My second motion is in regards to the formal complaint that we received from Mr. Williams to our committee. It's my belief that he went great lengths in a long amount of time. It's been a long amount of time that's passed to try and close what we called the loop for this constituent complaint with Department of Audit. The constituent mentioned that he was going to make a public records request on two things, one being the license surveys and how those invoices were determined regarding the allegation of $29,000 of overpayment. And then also communication between Department of Audit and the CPA. And I think at this point, since the complaint has come to our committee, that we should take that off his hands and just make that request ourselves to the agency. And help close the loop.
All right. Is there a second to that motion? It's been moved and seconded that we request from the agency direct to the committee the results of that investigation. All those, or discussion. Mr. Williams, I'm sorry, I can't, this is going to be for the board only for discussion. So any discussion?
I think he had 3 requests.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was there was 3 requests to that.
If I may, there were 3 requests. One is for the weight amounts, because the license surveys is what I received, so there should be documentation on the weight amounts. Second is correspondence between DOA and the CPA. So
we got
was
that
there
covered.
really that? And then this third is between the Department of Audit and Johnson County to resolve the issue. Any documentation there, those 3 things.
So, well, is it okay to add that to your motion, Representative Rodriguez-Williams?
Mr. Chairman, yes, absolutely. That's a
Second concurs.
Didn't have all my notes correct here. But yes, that's what I was getting at. And then that we, as a committee, we help the constituent with closing that loop and providing that information. Thank you.
All right, LSO, do you have those three directives? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Representative Sherwood, did you have a motion or a question? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
it's just killing me. I think we should have Johnson County come and tell us what's going on and discuss this item, especially the 9 months of non-compliance. 9 years, I'm sorry, months, years. I request that at our next meeting.
Okay, we can put out that invitation to Johnson County. Is everybody okay with that? All right. I don't think that needs to be necessarily a motion. Yeah. Let's request Johnson County to come talk about the 9 years of non-compliance in this issue. All right. Next topic for discussion. Livestock Board overview of law enforcement authority and programs. Thank you. Sorry, we're a little late, but
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Steve True, Director of the Livestock Board, and that's fine. That keeps me from having to talk about screwworm for an hour. Mr. Chairman, I'm not exactly sure what the committee wants to hear from me today. If it pleases you, I would give you a brief history of our law enforcement unit at the agency, where we stand, where we started and where we stand today, and then try to answer any questions that the committee has.
that'd be fine. Thank you. Please proceed.
So originally, what is now our livestock unit or livestock enforcement unit was formed as animal health inspectors back in the 70s when we were dipping cattle for scabies. So these guys ran the dipping vats and the state control of all of the dipping activity of imported and export livestock. Later on, and I couldn't dig up the exact date, but we transferred those positions into our livestock criminal investigator positions. They've been in that session. There's been different numbers of folks involved in that unit over the years, but the most recent history would be in 2017. We had 4 FTEs and a contract position. In the budget cuts that came that year, 3 of those FTEs and the contract were riffed. And so we lost them. We were then down to 1 law enforcement investigator. They did move, JAC did at that time move quite a bit more operating expense to that 1 officer, knowing he's going to have to cover the whole state by himself. So that still resided there. In 2019, the Joint Ag Committee, then chaired Senate Chair Senator Hicks, we got into a real deep discussion about multiplication of force, because 1 guy is not going to get it handled in the state of Wyoming. So at that time, a bill was introduced, 1118-120, and passed, called the Livestock Law Enforcement Account. It allowed us to help some sheriffs with some funding if they were involved in an investigation or something that these costs would be way outside the realm of their normal business. So a couple examples that we've done over that is complaints on shot horses, where we've sent those carcasses to the lab for autopsies. We've paid that cost for the sheriffs out of that account. Also inside that account, or during the summer of 2020, then we, in 19 and into 20, we promulgated rules for that and developed an MOU program that we're pretty tickled about today. So that MOU program allows us to contract with sheriff's offices to perform some targeted patrol for us, do some other things for us with folks that are off duty. We don't try and double dip anybody that's on duty on schedule any given day, but we'll take somebody that's off duty that wants to do some work for us or do some patrol. We'll pay them $65 an hour is what our contract's based now to go do that work. The sheriff provides the wheels so that he has a badged door out there while he's doing that work. accomplishes for us a couple of different major things. One, it puts folks out there, puts the sheriff out there, opportunity to talk to people when they're cruising around. That's one of the main things we ask them to do. If you see somebody fixing fence or somebody working along there, just go stop and say, hey, I'm doing this for the livestock board. Since we're alone, what do you got that I need to know? And furthering a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings between those deputies and their rural folks. One of our bases for that, and I've spoke to many other committees, and you guys are new, so you get to hear this, probably some of you for the first time. We're all looking for the same folks. Those sheriffs are looking for people that perform rural crime, burglary, gas thefts, theft of ATVs, hay theft, those things, and then we can combine that into our livestock theft program and our investigation. So it's really a great way to multiply our force. We've done that now. Actually, I'll come back to that if I'm going to go chronologically. In 2020, later, our board asked us to go to the legislature and ask for another position because we burned out our first one cop group in a hurry. And he moved on. He's now a Johnson County resident deputy. So we asked for one more position. The JAC at that time said, sure, you can have one more position. You figure out how to pay for it. And so we went to our constituents and said, would you be interested in paying for this out of our brand inspection recording account? Would you pay for another investigator? Our folks in the world out there said yes. Our board agreed. We went back to JAC, who then pulled another little rabbit out of the hat. There is a Department of Ag has what's called an animal remedy fund. If a wholesaler of drugs, animal remedies, wants to market those in the state of Wyoming, they were charged a $20 fee per drug at that time. So the legislature increased that. They doubled that to 40. We get 20, Department of Ag gets 20. So that $20 goes towards paying the salary of that investigator as well. That's the only general fund contribution towards that second investigator. So after that, with the MOUs, and we did write the rules, that MOU program, there's several criteria involved for a sheriff to sign up. And I always want to say this because some folks hear me talk about this and they say it's a grant. It's not a grant. They have to turn in their duty sheets monthly to my lead investigator and I, and we will approve or not approve some of the expenses they ask for. So it's never a grant, it's a reimbursement for those guys, off-duty guys that are willing to go work for our rural constituents. So in that, they also, the Deputy Department has to go through our livestock law and enforcement class. And our two investigators teach that class at the academy as well. They teach it to cadets for the Highway Patrol, and we teach it repeatedly to the sheriff organizations. In fact, in the last 5 years, we have taught 65 of those trainings in the sheriff's offices and elsewhere. So a lot of times a sheriff will do that training to sign up to the program, and then he'll have some more officers want to get interested, and so we'll come back and we'll train them as well. So that's working out really well for us. Currently, as of today, we have 14 counties in that, and they are Bighorn, Fremont, Hot Springs, Laramie, Lincoln, Natrona, Sheridan, Weston, Platte, Goshen, Converse, Crook, Niobrara, and Uinta. And we're pretty tickled with that because we've got the borders kind of covered, particularly our eastern border, where it's really easy to get stuff into a non-brand area in a hurry. The other part of that is we ask those folks to make stops. Make stops. If you see a pickup in a trailer, make a stop, the same as we would. And since we have determined or started this program, those sheriff's offices have made 718 contacts with pickups and trailers. We feel that's the way we're going to actually interdict a theft in a random stop by one of those guys. My two guys being in the right place in 97,000 square miles is a project. But these guys are out there roaming. I want to give to this committee extra kudos. Every county is working hard at this, but extra kudos to Laramie County and Sheridan County. Sheridan County, I think their deputies have met every producer in the state with that conversation, or in the region with that conversation that we try to reach. And those guys are roaming the back roads every chance they get. Laramie County has already formed an 8-man livestock unit. And they're working at patrolling our back roads in Laramie County, patrolling the borders and making stops down there. And also helping, they're doing a great job of helping highway patrol. You know, we're on 80 and 25, and there's a lot of bull hauler stops or semi stops that are made. And a lot of times we've got to go offload those while something's determined, and the sheriffs are always quick to back up and take over that part of it once the highway patrol has made that stop. Then both articles or both agencies will then cite traffic as well if something else is, if it's necessary, livestock wise. So that's kind of where our program, what it has grown into. I want to give you just a couple quick recent things. Several times now, several times our investigators have attended the Western States Livestock Enforcement Association meetings in Reno and taken deputies with them. And his ability to network. So they network with other states, and they have contacts in other states, other agencies, as well as we do. Our folks have attended the Rural Crime Task Force in Tulare, California twice. This is a highly intense training. Tulare is probably the heaviest agricultural and farm county in California. And those guys deal with everything from theft of $250,000 tractors to a goat. And so they have some techniques that they have shared with us that we've brought back and tried to share with our sheriffs. We don't have statutory authority to do that tractor, to do anything other than livestock. And so we're trying to help those guys get trained up. We took 2 deputies to that Rural Crime Task Force last fall with ours so that they could get that. They, in conjunction with my 2 officers in early June this year, had a rural intel crime meeting, crime intel sharing meeting in Converse County. They asked me not to say and publicly who all was there, but to say that they had multiple municipal, county, state, and federal partners and private security from some of our minerals folks that attended that intel sharing. Great meeting. We've got some federal folks that really want to help with interstate action. Those private industry folks have got every tool and trick that we don't have with cameras, drones, those sort of things. And they're going to be a great asset to us because they're working out in the same country where our ranchers are. So we're pretty excited about that. Tuesday of this week, we had some folks come to a board meeting, one of my board meetings, and complain about their particular area and an ongoing over several years theft that we dealt with it a few years back in a deterrent fashion, and it kind of went away, and now these guys think it's coming back. So Tuesday this week, I held a meeting in Albany County in the beautiful Rock River Town Hall with these folks, one of my investigators, one of my brand inspectors from each side of the mountain there from Platte and Albany County, and sheriffs from both districts, and had a really good meeting. I won't link you to it, but one of the folks that attended the meeting, one of the complainants, had out a really nice Facebook post the next day with signs we'd given him and how tickled he was with the meeting and the conversations with those law enforcement agencies. So that would be the long or short version of my 30,000-foot view. I do want to add that my 2 investigators, I brought a topic to judiciary in the session. Representative Lean was there, trying to add language to make us more similar to game and fish, that they could react to a felony in their presence, so that they don't. Today, certain entities tell us they would be just as liable as I would as a civilian if I interacted in that. And we want to protect their ability as fully post-certified trained officers. And by that, they are certified trainers and teachers of livestock law and investigation, firearms instructors and certification, and active shooting trainers. So these are highly trained individuals that are really trying to share their stuff and gain more contacts by teaching these classes and working in that venue. So, Mr. Chairman, that I think would complete my quick purview of what we do, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that the committee may have.
That's great. Director Trey, I have a couple questions. So I love the MOU program. The funds that are allocated, they're within your budget and are replenished every biennium?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I missed that part. And so, yes, my livestock investigators are housed as a subunit under animal health because that's where they started. But their appropriation is in our standard budget, just the way I described to you. That MOU program in statute applied a $500,000 appropriation. The first couple years, the AC asked us to treat that as a pilot program. They gave us $250,000. And it took a little while to get traction with the sheriff, so JAC carried the balance of that for us for about a few bienniums. In 2024, they put the entire $500,000 in our standard budget because now we're contracting these sheriffs for 2 years at a time on this program. And it still allows us some money out there in case we've got to move somebody around on an out-of-state investigation, move a deputy, help them move a deputy somewhere on a livestock case, or in those cases, like I talked about, some lab charges or things that they're not set up to pay. So, and each of those things comes through to me. I approve them and the board takes a peek at those too. So we make sure that those are all sound and positive events when we do that.
And my second question is, it's a fairly new program with quite a few counties signed up already. Do you anticipate the rest of the counties to get on board and at least participate in some form with the MOU for each county?
Mr. Chairman, I'd love to have all 23. There's a couple that don't think they need to play. They think they do livestock pretty well already, and they don't want to take that funding away from potentially a poorer county that wants to move that around. And there's a couple counties that are pretty active, and we're hauling their deputies around because they have a dedicated livestock deputy, but they're not interested in the MOU at this time. But I also had 2 this year sign up that said they would never, and they're both in now. So I'm not saying never for any of them. We talk to them all the time. My guys attend all of the WASCOP meetings, all of that, and try and sell that to them.
I hope they do. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. True, thank you for being here. Just a quick question with the price of cattle being so high right now. Are you guys seeing an increase in theft? And then what sort of trends are we seeing in Wyoming?
Director Chairman, Representative Williams, thank you. Great question. I want to touch on that in a couple different fashions. Since we've started this, first goes back to the MOU program, we typically used to average anywhere between 55 and 70 missing cases or missing reports per year. Since 2022, we're down to about 23 to 30. And I think we're having a deterrent action there. That's anecdotal, but I've told committees many times over the years, I can't measure deterrence, but I'm really happy if we drive them somewhere else and they're somebody else's problem. So to your question, Representative Williams, what we're concerned about now, and we're getting about out of that season, we had a ton of baby calf reports. Little slick, no brand baby calves. Sale barn, a bucket calf's worth $1,500 here a couple weeks ago. That is an easy piece of action. We've had responded to several. We had one case where I think the complainant's social media attack while my investigator was en route from 6 hours away actually caused these people to dump their twin calves out because they showed up in a place with snow with no baby calf tracks to show that they'd walked there. So that's been our biggest concern at this point. Everything is high priced. We're taking every missing report seriously. Please, in your contacts with your constituents, what I try and tell them is we're another risk management tool. Most producers, particularly from my generation, don't want to tell somebody that I'm missing 10 head because I'm going to look for them. But the sooner we know about it, the sooner we can blast out our notice on that missing report to 16 states, and their law enforcement agencies, all our inspectors, everywhere we go with that, it's a huge email string that goes out to. The quicker we know that, the quicker we can get out there, because within 3 or 4 days, it's a cold case. You know, where we sit, we're 10 hours to a non-brand area, whichever direction you go. So it's pretty easy to get those gone where we can never track them. So if you talk to producers that have questions, please tell them it's just another hedge. And then if you find them, you call us and we'll lift the hedge. That report goes away. But we love to hear about it. The sooner we hear about it, the better. This was the exciting part about these 2 baby calves, is there was a 45-minute window in there when they could have been gone, and they talked to my investigator within an hour. And so he was on the road. He says, here's one. I'm not looking at something they saw in April and reported in October. You know, and so we really appreciate that. Now, having said that, because I did that time frame, we also understand that a ton of our livestock go into the allotments in communal grazing out in the western part of the state, and they're not seen very often. You know, so we understand that maybe we turned out in May, and our rider said he saw most of our cattle in July, but when we hauled out in November, we're short. We understand that. So we try to look at that as well. But that's one of the real roadblocks to us is timing and trying to find out things quick. It's hard to trace. A living commodity, if I was to go break into your house, Chairman, and take your TV, I'm going to get a nickel on. And and as Ms. Williams made a good comment, if I take your calf, I'm going to get full value. I'm going to get full value for him somewhere. So it's a different thing, and our producers are pretty vulnerable to that right now. I hope that answered your question, Representative.
Thank you.
Other questions? Well, is there anything that you need from the legislature? Sounds like your programs are pretty supported and financed, and everything's starting off great.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think so. Judiciary did not take up my topic. You guys loaded your boat pretty full with what you're doing, Representative Lean. I don't envy you with the workload you guys have got there. But I think we will probably address a few legislators and try and bring that little change in our statutory definition as a standalone in this session. And I may reach out to some of you for some help on that. But I think that's all at this point. We can always use more funding and more guys, but we also know that we're going to do our dangest with what we've got. And this multiplication of force has worked well. I want to thank Senator Hicks for our early conversations about that.
All right. Are there any other public comments for this in the room or online?
There's nobody currently online, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the update. It sounds like a great success, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you and the committee's interest. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Oh, one question, Senator or Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for letting me change my mind, Mr. True. Thank you for the information. Would you get with me before the end of the meeting and just share the contact information for the livestock board where individuals can report their missing livestock?
Sure. All right, thank you. Is there any other business to come before the committee? All right, we are adjourned.